All right, we're going to get started here.
It's not on the agenda.
We're gonna, maybe.
Okay, yep. So somebody.
All right. I'm going to read you the opening statement. Welcome to our council meeting. In the interest of time, efficiency, and ensuring everyone who wishes to address the council is given the opportunity to do so, the following will apply to all comments made by the public. Each speaker shall be allotted 3 minutes to address the council unless at such time it is extended by the deputy mayor or by questions from the council. Groups shall designate a spokesperson to avoid repetition of comments. Every effort shall be made to avoid interrupting speakers. Thank you for participating in your city government. At this time, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Okay, so we're going to start tonight by having an invocation from Bishop Sam Hott from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We'll all stand for this and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. It'll be led by Mr. Urban.
Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads before you this afternoon in gratitude for all of our many blessings. We're so thankful for this beautiful city we have to live in, for the land we call home. We're so thankful for our country, for our freedom, and for those who fight for it and those who have fought. We're so thankful for those that help keep our homes and our county and our city afloat, and that make the good decisions and stand in harm's way to protect us and to help us. And we're grateful for the leaders that serve and that are responsible for making decisions for our families and the people who live here. We're thankful for all that thou hast blessed us with, and we ask at this time to have thy Spirit to help us make good decisions, to understand the complexities of the issues in front of us and that face our community. We ask a special blessing upon families and our youth, that they will be protected this summer, they'll make good decisions, and that they will be watched over. And we pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, we're gonna move on to the roll call, please.
Mayor Blackwell, Deputy Mayor Matheny,
Here.
Councilmember Urban,
Here.
Councilmember Askew,
Here.
Councilmember Trace.
Here.
City Manager, do we have any revisions to the agenda?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, I'd like to pull council action item number 5, the purchase of the 9.5 acres for a park. I think we need to do some more staff work. We don't have a full council now. I'd like a full council discussion and more community input. So thank you.
Do you have a meeting specific for that, or?
We do not yet.
Okay. So I have 2 slips to talk on this item. If you want, you can still speak in the beginning of the meeting when it's open, just for comment.
And then Deputy Mayor, if staff could give an update about the traffic signal out in front of the neighborhood, so some of the neighbors can get an update on that.
Sure. Do we have?
Yes, ma'am, I do. Thank you. As you recall, Council, back in May of 2021, we signed an ILA for cost share agreement with the county to put in a light at Deer Creek. The county just issued the notice to proceed on June 14th, and there's a project timeline of 393 days for construction.
Is that from the notice to proceed?
From the notice to proceed, right.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, that's, we were told initially it was like January, February, but that's the timeline they gave us today.
I think a lot of it is lead time for materials
Yeah,
on that.
that's all I have.
Great, thank you. We're going to go into our presentations. Our first presentation will be by Mary Emma, but I don't know how to say your last name, Bachelder, on Ask Oscar.
All right, good evening, council. I am Mary Emma Batchelder, the communications director for the city. I'm just here tonight just to inform you and introduce you to Oscar. He's on the screen there, and as you see, Dave Askew took this photo. I think when he took the photo, he didn't know I was going to adopt Oscar, name him, and then put him to work for the city, but I did all that with Dave's permission, so thank you to Councilmember Askew. Next slide, please. What this is a artificial intelligent chatbot that we are going to launch. It's going to be SMS-based, so anybody with a cell phone can simply text the city at a toll-free number if they have questions, they want to report an issue, anything like that. So we've been looking for ways to enhance our communications with our residents, make it easier for them to get in touch with us, get answers to their questions, and then quickly resolve issues. Right now, we have St. Cloud Connect app, so they need to download a app onto their phone, and then they have a login, and if you're like me, you have 50 million logins and passwords. It's kind of hard to keep track of all that. So this is our attempt to provide them another avenue to reach out to us and make it a little easier. Studies show people, if you have a cell phone, 97% of people with cell phones text, so this is a really convenient way for people to be able to reach out to us. I forgot I have the clicker here. They can submit service requests, they can ask questions, they can actually send messages directly to our staff. This is something that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A lot of the things that we get a lot of phone calls about, like, you know, when's my trash pickup, and, you know, irrigation days, and things like that can all be answered automatically with Oscar. So they can just simply send us a text, they can get that information, and it helps us divert calls away from the phone system. It seamlessly integrates, I neglected to mention, with our existing Rock Solid platform. This is what our app goes through. So if we get, for example, somebody wants to report a pothole, obviously Oscar can't go out and fill the pothole, but he can tell us about it. So it integrates with our Rock Solid platform. It goes into that system where it gets tracked so that we can make sure that it gets addressed. And then this system actually will reach back out to the resident and close that loop on the communication with them as well. Just a couple of case studies. North Charleston, South Carolina, you'll see there, their citizen engagement increased by 94% in the first 6 months and reduced their number of calls coming into their customer service call center. So this is reducing wait time. And they were able to fix, as you see there, 195% more streetlights. They repaired and replaced more trash cans. They're able to fill more potholes, and they're just able to be more responsive to their citizens. Queen Creek, Arizona, their call time for residents, their wait time on the phone reduced by 90% because so much of this traffic is being diverted to the SMS-based system, so they're not getting as many calls. Therefore, those who do call are having shorter wait times on those phone lines. New Orleans, they call theirs Jazz, and 66% of their interactions that they get through their Jazz system are via text messages. And a lot of those, as you see there, more than half are related to trash and recycling. So there are some common themes among cities, no matter where they are or how big they are. City there in California, 87% of all their requests come through their chatbot. Brownsville, Texas, nearly a third of those are handled by the chatbot when they get those requests, and 92% of them are coming in straight through their chatbot. California, they get close to half of their questions that they get are answered by the chatbot. You see in Arlington, Texas, I talked to the kind of person there in Arlington that has my similar position, and they are very, very high on this. They actually had, as you see there, a historic snow event and lost a lot of their traditional means of communications. Their local servers had gone down. Some of their, they weren't able to post to social media. A lot of their traditional ways, they couldn't communicate. So they went to their chatbot because CityBot, the company that we've contracted with and that they use, have servers in several different locations. So if they lose one, they've got backups and they've got duplicity in their system. So heaven forbid we get hit with a storm, hurricane, or so forth, and we lose some of our traditional means of communications with our citizens. This is a great way that we can still interact with them and get out that vital information. This is just a screenshot of samples of what people would likely see kind of on the left there, the cell phone. If they text hello to Oscar, he'll send them a reply back, and then they can just start chatting with him. We also will have Oscar's presence on our website, and for example, if they say, I want to report a pothole or something, they will get pop-ups there that they can just click on that will allow them to easily resolve their issue. We've got several things mocked up for our marketing. We have print capabilities that we can put in some of our local publications. Our Channel 499 on Spectrum, we will promote him there also with a QR code, and you'll see it just tells him to text hello to Oscar at the phone number, which is an easy toll-free number. It's 844-57-OSCAR, and we put the number there as well on all of our marketing materials. We'll have web-based marketing. We'll have a lot of different campaigns on social media that will kind of cue them to the types of things that Oscar can help them with. And then, of course, there's other opportunities that we can look at as we go. Decals on some city vehicles, we can get promo items, and then leveraging our existing media contracts to market that. Cost-wise, this year, it is costing us a little over $18,000. As you see there, just south of $7,000 of that was an implementation fee. And then we have annual subscriptions both for the web-based platform and our text-based platform. They gave us a discount, so our total year-one cost was just a little over $18,000. As we move forward, we are able to monitor the data on this so we can see where most of our requests are coming in from. And if we find that 98% of them are text and we don't really need the web, then we can drop that next year or vice versa. And also, as we go, Oscar can get smarter and keep learning things. So if he's getting asked a lot of things that maybe he's not able to find on the website to help them with, we can educate him and make sure that he gets smarter as we go. So, any questions?
I don't see any. I think this is great technology. I know everybody has their cell phone in their hand at all times, and you see something, and it's just great that you could just send it right then, not like, let me write this down and try to remember to tell someone. So I think it's great.
Yep, it'll be instant. So, all right. Well,
Thank you very much. Next up, we'll have a presentation regarding the update on Toho Water Authority and City of St. Cloud integration by Mr. Todd Swingle.
Good evening, Council. Here to give you an update on the integration activities. It's been a busy few months, and we'll want to first just extend my thanks to all of the staff from both Toho and St. Cloud for working together. It's been a very positive experience across both organizations. A couple of the key transition elements that were identified in their interlocal agreement: bond validation, the leachate dispute, and the transition plan. On the bond validation, we had our circuit court hearing on June 9th, and the judgment was issued that day and did validate the issuance of our bonds and the validity of the underlying interlocal agreement. As you're well aware, the leachate dispute, you entered into a settlement on that same day, June 9th as well, and then the transition plan is under development, and those transition plan items are really what we'll cover mostly through the remainder of this presentation. Transition planning support, we'll walk through a number of these items as we get through the remainder of the slides. Early on in the transition, we want to give good visibility to all of the teams, and so this laid out the roadmap predominantly for the employees, so all employees by department and functions, and then also the functional transition small teams. We took the approach to deal with a larger scale interaction, held several breakfasts, things of that nature, but then also quickly moved into getting down to where the individual functional teams were meeting together. That team engagement, I just mentioned the meet and greet. They were held, what I know as the senior center, and had a time period of several hours where we had our senior staff and managers available so that St. Cloud utility staff could come by, just get to know us, and then also talk through some of the transition plan elements. Have been generating a newsletter that initially started off bi-weekly, and then we're slowing that pace down as we get further into the transition. Established functional teams, In fact, just the last few weeks, we have been holding an HR Direct Connect where our HR folks have been here, meeting with each St. Cloud employee one-on-one to learn about their skill sets and the certifications that they have, any training to make sure that all employees are positioned properly. And then we also have a steering committee that's providing oversight, and that is all of the senior management within both entities. Transition planning teams, again, covered a lot of different functions, planning and development, engineering and CIP, which is capital improvement plan, customer service, cross-connection control, operations, finance, human resources, information technology, procurement, communications, and legal. A significant amount of our effort has been on the capital improvement program, and just as when I presented to you back in February, where that was a lot of the focus, that's where we've put a lot of our energies, is getting that capital improvement plan integrated, where it pulled together all of your background information, your previous master plans, the different years of your 5-year capital plans that were available, as well as the integration plans that we had put together. So it includes any of those projects that from those master plans or prior CIPs that have not yet been completed. It also includes an extensive listing of new development projects. Similar to projections, and as we have previously noted, the historic average, the 5-year CIP was about $39 million. Your master plans identified those as a little over 200. The most recent 5-year CIP was about 145. And then through this effort, we've identified current cost estimates of about $114 million. With the caution that across all utilities and all personal budgets, and we are seeing the same effects of inflation that everyone else is, so we'll be monitoring these CIP projects closely. We just are in the process of giving our budget presentations to our board, and we've seen PVC has been one of the biggest price increases just across the board, and I think it was on the order of 140% over the last 2 years. And ductile iron pipe was significantly less than that, but also at a much higher than the 8% inflation that we're seeing. So managing capital over these coming years is going to be a challenge for all utilities. Water CIP. This is the water-related programs. That's about $48 million of that total. During this process, we have supported launch of critical projects, which have included predominantly road-related relocations, and then pushing water into the northeast quadrant of your service area. In fact, you've got several of these projects on for approval tonight, including the Northeast Booster Station capacity increase, Nolte Road Booster Pump Station, new water mains in the Hickory Tree area, and then also utility relocations associated with county road projects that are moving very quickly in Neptune Road and Parton Settlement Road. Additional key projects that we've moved into the CIP that were not in your current 5-year programs are the water treatment plant number 4 preliminary design, and then also the east-west transmission from the water treatment plant area across the southern portion of town, again to push water to the east and to the northeast. The wastewater CIP is the smallest of your 3 investment areas, $18 million, supporting implementation of critical projects. Most notably, that one is the consent order project delivery, but it also includes upsizing projects predominantly related to the Kissimmee Park, Lake Toho area, as well as more routine ongoing lift station management rehabilitation work, and then some upgrades that are necessary at the Southside wastewater plant, particularly in the area of biosolids management. The reuse CIP, again, about $48 million. Since the approval of the integration, we have assisted with helping launch critical projects that are critical to relocation projects, as well as, again, moving water to that northeast quadrant. These include the Lakeshore Utility relocates, again, associated with the county's project up there, and then also new reuse mains supplying the northeast. Key projects that are moved into the CIP starting next year is interconnecting piping, starting with the Sunbridge area, where we have a new plant that is under construction. That will be a wastewater treatment plant up in that area and producing reclaim. One of the strategies that I presented to you before is that we'll be redirecting some of the wastewater in your Narcoossee corridor to this plant to keep that reclaimed water up in that area to make sure that some irrigations that is currently fed with potable water can be converted over to reclaimed. Advancing the western storage and repump, which is out in the Kindred to Hokwa area, and then interconnects with Toho systems supporting supplemental water transfer, where we're moving forward with our Judge Farms Toho Reservoir project, which many of you have seen driving down Neptune Road. We've also begun active coordination with developments in your heaviest development areas, and in particular the Kissimmee Park Lake Toho area. Over the last several months, we've been working with the developers to consolidate growth projections and phasing plans, identifying and connecting the different infrastructure needs. City staff had been working with a variety of these projects. We're trying to create a little bit of a longer view so that we have a true understanding of everything that's coming into that area and making sure that we're looking at those phasing plans and also the financing plans associated with any upsizing requirements on those pipes. Strengthening irrigation and conservation requirements. This is an important piece across both existing and new customers, but particularly with the level of growth that's occurring in different areas, making sure that we have a very proactive conservation plan. So working with developers to establish a lower expectation of irrigation and supplemental irrigation that is needed. Is going to be critical to maintaining suitable water supplies for all of these areas. Generally, Toho's current requirement, and that would be what we're using in this area as well, is to design for 28 inches of total supplemental irrigation per year. That is largely what is generated from homes. However, it's the water that's generated from the irrigation demands is more seasonal in nature, and that's where we pull it together with some of our supplemental sources as well as wet weather management opportunities. Developing cost-sharing plans for this sector, and then also changes in standards, including transmission corridors. One of the things that we observe is with the intense growth in this area, historically many utilities have put their pipes in right-of-ways. It's the simplest, the easiest. When you get into some of these major developments and we have pipes that are larger diameter, so 24 inches and above, if you have to relocate those in the future, if those pipes were constructed in right-of-way, it becomes the utility's responsibility for those costs. If it is constructed in an easement, then often it gets designed around. If it does get impacted in the easement, then it becomes whoever is impacting the pipe rather than the utility's responsibility. So in this area, any roads that we have that are anticipated to be expanded in the future or that have what we are considering major transmission maidens, and generally those are 24 inches and up, would be required to be in easements so that we can make sure that we've got are protecting future cost exposure for the utility. Planning and development process, again, working closely with the planning, engineering, and utilities departments. We'll continue to participate in the DRC process. As per the interlocal agreement, incorporate the encumbrance obligations and JPA compliance. We're coordinating some template forms for the comp plan and site plan stage utility availability letters that are necessary. And then our teams are working also on integrating the code standards and specifications. And these are some things that you'll see coming forward, particularly where currently the standards and specs are, it's section 7 of your land development code. It is adoptable by resolution. It's not actually part of the code anymore, but that will be moved to where it is a reference to our standards. So there's a number of these that will come in front of you to clean up those reference points to Toho standards. And then, again, as I mentioned, providing a consistent conservation program. Consent order execution is something that we've been very active in supporting, so implementing quarterly reports to the DEP, revising the in-kind approach that was previously being utilized. We have assisted extensively with completion of the operations and maintenance manual to meet the required deadline, and then also supporting ongoing activities with the Lakeshore facility evaluation, lining projects, and the lift station 80 odor control system for lift station 84, where we did work with St. Cloud Utility staff to extend secure time extension and are working on the procurement and design of that odor control system for that area. Supporting the city as well in the northeast area pressure issues. We've created and are leading a task force to address the issues that have been experienced over the last several years due to some of the concentrated irrigation demands during dry season periods. Through that task force work, we have identified that a number of issues are causing those pressure responses. High water use, some piping constraints that in that area, the northeast booster station capacity, and east-west transfer station, water transfer to the northeast booster. Again, those should look very familiar, as those are the projects that you have, again, on tonight's for approval. Immediate actions that we've taken are customer contacts, working with folks that are irrigating off-cycle or that have very significant use. I will tell you, we've seen single-family residential use in that area extending up to 50,000 gallons a month. And so some of those, our target would generally be for external irrigation should somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 gallons would be a more appropriate number. We have worked on to optimizing existing staff, both TOHO, or existing facilities, both TOHO and St. Cloud staff work together to work through the system, make sure that the booster stations are operating at their full optimum capacity. Also going through the system to identify any valves that may either be closed or partially closed. This is a problem that all utilities fight, and the more people you have working on your system, such as with the number of projects that are going on, this happens. So it's something that is just required to do periodically, and there were several valves that were identified to help with that issue. We've opened interconnects, so we are now supplying water from the north end to help with meeting some of those pressure demands. We have to be cognizant of some of our permit capacity in that area, but we are selectively opening those during the anticipated peak periods in order to reduce some of those pressure drops that were occurring. And also revising the irrigation schedule, and we're working through that. The standard irrigation schedule that most utilities use is an odd-even schedule. That puts everyone watering on 4 days a week. So each customer gets 2 days, and then there's 2 different cycles. We secured permission from the Water Management District to go to an alternative approach that spreads that over 6 days. That in its own right significantly can reduce the concentrated demand. Similar to your existing reuse schedule where there's allotted times, we've also provided that on the potable side as well to try to spread out some of those peak demands so that the pressures you're not seeing as much pressure loss. We're then launching the critical projects, Northeast Booster capacity increase, piping improvements needed to support the Northeast area. We're also evaluating supplemental water projects, such as putting a well up in that area that can directly provide water to the irrigation piping that already exists, but that would operate within your existing consumptive use permit. We have seen some successes over the last several weekends. Now, we have seen some rain too, but we have seen some improvements where previously we were seeing pressures drop into the 30s or even slightly below that. We're now seeing hold closer to 40 PSI. And so we'll continue to work on those projects. Operations team has been working diligently, developing integrated operating zones. We anticipate operating as an integrated utility in 4 different zones. Performing a wastewater treatment operations audit. We used a consultant that we use extensively for our own audits. He used to be the chief operator for the Denver Metropolitan Wastewater Plant. And I am pleased to say the operator had very good things to say about the St. Cloud staff at the wastewater plant. Planning SCADA upgrades and integration, and then we've also been active here over the last several weeks assessing resin management at Water Treatment Plant 4, evaluating process optimization, and then working on a CIP project to upgrade plant processes. We do anticipate starting some pilot testing in the very near future for alternative treatment processes to inform those process design decisions. Funding success, again, the teams work together extensively with your grants writer, and this was a project that your city manager had identified early on as something that was very important to him, was the relocation of the Hopkins Park lift station. So We worked together and created a project to relocate that lift station as well as provide gravity sewer along the River Road corridor. And I'm happy to say that it has passed the first level of funding scrutiny through Congressman Soto, and it's moving through that appropriations process, a little in excess of $1 million in funding. Customer and community. Significant community outreach. We have joined the St. Cloud Chamber. We are working on a number of things toward the requirements of the local, plus just those things that we feel are important as well. A transition update for the community newsletter. We will be maintaining a presence in City Hall, information on customer billing, developing an information web microsite. And then just this past weekend, we're participants in the Experience Osceola and continue to perform community outreach there. Our customer service team is probably one of the most active beyond the CIP side. That functional team has been identified. They've been working together. They have completely inventoried their processes, systems, and vendors, working to inform those key partners of the transition and working through what that will look like. Some of those things that will occur before October and others that will extend on through the coming year. Identifying critical processes and prioritizing those that need to be updated prior to the October 1st transition date. And then working through organizational structure, which we expect to be finalized in the next month. The transition to TOHO rates is ongoing, is customer communications. We do have you scheduled for, and working with staff, a rate hearing is for July 14th. We have encountered some challenges in the billing structure. There's been a lot of customization in the St. Cloud CIS system, which is the Customer Information System. So we have developed some interim rates, and I'll show you those in just a minute. They are predominantly TOHO's rates. There's just a few places where the tiers are slightly different, and I'll show you what those are. The usage, this would go into effect for usage through the August time period, and then reflected in your first full billing in cycle in September, which I think comes out September 14th. August and September of 2022, you'll start to see also these code changes beginning to come forward. Those I've already mentioned as well. These are where you can see the slight differences that occur. In your lower tiers, our first tier stops at 2,000 gallons, and on the water side, we charge 60 cents. Your tier stops your first tier stops at 3,000, so we've extended our 60-cent tier up to that 3,000 to match those tiers. The same happens at 6,000. We enter a new tier at 6,000. So ours are 0 to 2, 2 to 5. Yours are 0 to 3, 3 to 6. And so again, we've extended that 5,000 gallon tier to your 6,000. So that creates some benefit for those lower income customers and lower usage customers. We get into a higher increase up in the higher areas, so that 19 to 20,000 gallon, our tier breaks at 20,000. Yours breaks at 18. So in that case, we needed to bring that rate down to that 18, the 18 and 19,000 gallon tier. So the difference on those is when we do a complete revenue model, it actually has more benefit to the St. Cloud customers as a whole than even the TOHO rates as standard, but it is very close. As a summary, we've remodeled the change to the residential bills. Again, with this in place, inside the city limits for water and sewer only, customers using 6,000 gallons or less, which it represents about 8,000 people, would see a rate decrease. Outside the city limits, that is about 13,000 gallons or 97% of the bills. We do recognize there's more to it than just water and sewer. There's water, sewer, irrigation, cross connection. So this graph is similar to what I showed you in our presentation back in February. It does remain consistent with 73% of the customers seeing a cost decrease. The 27% that see an increase are predominantly in higher use, whether it is commercial or the most notable places are very heavy reclaim users. And again, we do have quite a few of those. So upcoming communications is updating irrigation schedules and then targeted communications to these higher volume users. So while about 3/4 of your customers will see that rate decrease, we want to make sure that we're reaching out to those that could see a rate increase, because in many instances, there are opportunities for them to adjust behavior. So adjusting irrigation timers, irrigation clocks. Toho does also have some additional programs for larger users where we have a separate allocation rate, and so that's an opportunity as well. That's one of the other reasons that we want to make sure that we are thoughtful on when these go into place, so that we can take that time to reach out and have those direct communications with those particular customers. Other supporting functions, again, HR Direct Connect, meeting with all the utilities employees. Data transfers underway. We're targeting by August the organizational chart, position assignments, wage notifications, which is at least the existing plus 2,000 minimum. Coordinating benefits transition, and then the pension program by the legal team. Business services, quite a few back and forth still that will occur. The city actions that are being provided to Toho will still make available warehouse, city hall joint use. Payment of costs for the billing collection, but this is costs that your other functions already pay to environmental utilities for providing that billing service. Financial and accounting closeout, which will transition past October 1st, because the closeout of the fiscal year does take some time. Vehicle maintenance and fueling, and IT transition support. Toho's actions, as our budget will incorporate the environmental utilities FY23 budget, and you'll be going through your rate hearings here shortly. Payment of the pilot fees and allocated admin for services received, and then providing that ongoing support for billing, collections, and remittance of EMS, refuse, and stormwater fees and charges. IT. Our most critical IT initiative right now is on the finance side, revenue and expense management, so making sure that we're pointed properly for all billing, collections, and the remittance of those additional costs back to the city. We're already working with, and we'll transition into those general items such as email, networks, and security roadmaps, and GIS and data sharing. And then over the next year is some of the more intense conversions like CIS and operations, both the CIS system as well as SCADA support. General counsel and the legal team developing pension plan and ordinance, planning, development, and code support, both the city codes, land development codes, standards and specs, and then water and wastewater development services agreements to make sure that our DSAs, as we call them, include all the required obligations from the interlocal agreement. And then finally is representation. Representation on the Toho Board of Supervisors is 2 voting representatives that will be appointed by the City Council, and then 1 non-voting ex officio member, which is a seated member of the council. All Toho Board representatives must be a qualified elector of the Osceola County and a Toho ratepayer as defined in the Toho Charter, which is very broad. It can be that you yourself are a ratepayer or that you work for a company that is a ratepayer. And this is an action that I think the City Council will need to discuss here in the not too distant future. Pending the transition on October 1st, we would be able to seat your representatives as early as our October meeting. So our key focal points moving forward are implementing identified critical and or lagging CIP projects. I did want to again note the inflation and supply chain risk management is a key to all of our CIP management that we're doing. Supply chain is challenging in addition just to the inflation, so delivery times on projects are continuing to have to be closely managed. We're doing a lot more owner direct purchase now to get materials moving early. The rate transition, transitioning to that interim structure in August with the bills in September. And then final transition concurrent with our CIS integration, which will be over the next year, no later than October of 2023. Customer and community communications, deploying our organizational plan and structure, the financial system cutover associated with the end of the fiscal year, and then the IT systems roadmap. And with that, I will turn it over to you for any questions that you may have.
Councilmember Trace.
Thank you. Thanks for the update. A lot of good information, and looks like you guys have been working hard. Something I didn't see in the update is on the Cypress Lake project and the capacity improvements. Is that still on track? Is that something that we need now based on your analysis of the interconnected system?
Right now, we're still projecting it in about 28, 29 timeframe. It could move, so it depends a little bit on development. So, I mean, if development continues at its current sustained pace or increases, that could come forward some. We are very actively, as the Stopper Group and the Water Co-op, moving that project forward. So the current state of the project is that we have completed our concentrate disposal well. It was successful. We did find a zone that is both adequately permeable to accept the water, and it is over 10,000 TDS, or total dissolved solids, which are salts. And that is the 10,000 is the threshold level where you are allowed to dispose of your brine. So we did find that area. We are now in the process of mobilizing for the next step, which is the monitoring well. There's a chance we'll need 2 monitoring wells. The first monitoring well we anticipate being set at 1,950 feet below ground. That drilling should be starting anytime now. It's likely that we're going to need a second monitoring well at about 1,600 feet. And those are just based upon the lithology that we've encountered. We continue to be in design, and we are also moving forward with our negotiations on land acquisition. We expect the land acquisition to be completed this year, and then design will continue over probably about the next 2 years. The other major initiative that we're working through is establishment of our governance protocols. So while we do have the Water Co-op that is an agreement, each project has its own governance that's necessary that talks about how financing is going to occur, how it's going to be operated, how water is going to be allocated between the entities, how rates are going to be developed for those waters. So that is our other active initiative that we're moving forward with.
Okay, because part of that was my worry is we're part of a bigger group, and if we need the water before them, do we have to fund that full project, or vice versa? If they go first, do we lose our allocation if those other stopper participants?
It is structured that when somebody needs it, it has to move together, and candidly, either Toho or St. Cloud are the utilities that would be likely to need it first. We have just secured an additional 3.8 million gallons of temporary allocation from the Water Management District that helps provide some cushion, and we are also advancing our Shingle Creek project, to which we already have permits. So right now, the projections show that under all but the most extreme scenarios, that we meet those water obligations. Again, as we start to see some of these new developments coming in, there will need to be, to ensure that those approvals have takedown rates, because if everything that is planned, in particularly the Lake Toho-Kissimmee area, were to build at once, no, there would not be enough water at that time. So there has to be a timetable that is consistent with the projections that are used, which are generally somewhere between Beaver medium, Beaver high, but it comes from the Central Florida Water Initiative projections.
And that was always my worry with the way our capacity went, is you have capacity for the whole thing or none. So you guys are now going to stage it to where?
It is absolutely going to be staged. So that project is a 30 million gallon a day project. The first phase will be built at 15 million gallons, and even within that 15 million gallons, I don't anticipate that we will put all the equipment in for 15. We'll most likely put high service pumps and membrane systems in for 5 to 7 MGD. So it will absolutely be staged. The other thing is, by virtue of this integration, we expect to be able to delay a significant portion of the piping coming into St. Cloud. So our intent would be first to build the piping to come into the southern end of Toho's system, and then push water from our Parkway plant and expand Water Plant 4 and reallocate some of capacity from our western systems to help delay some of the expense associated with the pipes coming out of Cypress Lake. So even though building the plant is still going to be expensive, there's about half the cost is with these large diameter pipes. So our goal is to try to delay those as long as possible so that they're coming concurrent with the development that occurs in that area.
Okay. And then storm season coming up. Last year, it might have been 2 years ago, we had a decent amount of storm-related issues with inflow and infiltration. I don't know if those have been fully wrapped up. I know we did a couple projects on that. I just want to make sure that's on the radar.
So you've got, I mentioned the consent order, and you've got quite a few consent order projects that are associated with those cleanouts, the lateral lining, gravity sewer lining. Those are underway. They're not all fully complete. There's been a lot of the work done, but those are part of the consent order and are actively moving forward. I think the consent order deadline is the end of the year on those, but they're definitely moving forward.
Okay.
The other piece of that is, again, we certainly will be here to help as well. And one of the things that we do, we've got extensive vac trucks on contract, and we'll respond as appropriate to help if there are issues as well.
Okay, thank you. And then irrigation timing. So some of those were like 2:30 in the morning to 5 o'clock, which is good because the sun's not out. What about for folks that don't have irrigation timers, automatic programmable irrigation timers, just some of the folks in the grid or some other areas?
So like hand watering, and so hand
Or
watering.
just they hand operate the valves. And I mean, there's some older systems in here and some older houses. I just didn't know if we're going to force them to have an automated system to go at 2 o'clock in the morning.
So I don't know that we've addressed that, but I can take a look at that one and get back to you. From a practical standpoint, and I think in my view, that's considered hand watering. So
Okay.
hand watering is flexible. Most of these, and most of, the grid is not your issue.
Yeah, it's
So
Arcus
either.
Road, yeah.
So predominantly the areas that have issues are newer systems and are timed systems.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
City Manager?
Thank you.
Mr. Askew?
I just want to say thank you I appreciate the update.
Thank you.
City Manager?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So it's going to come as a shock to you, but we've never, ever integrated two utility service systems. So it's been a very difficult process, but I want to recognize three people. First off, Mr. Swingle and his team. Thank you, Todd. It's been a pleasure working with you. And then our Deputy City Manager, who's our program manager for this integration, and also Marjorie Craig continued to do the day-to-day operations. With that said, we're at a point that it's becoming cumbersome for multiple people to be in charge. So on the 15th of July, Mr. Swingle, under my authority, will be managing the day-to-day operations also, and Ms. Craig will move into her other role to support him. So we'll be doing that. Dan?
Can I add a caveat?
Absolutely.
You will see a interlocal agreement, a temporary interlocal agreement with Toho on your next council agenda to basically grant that authority and to address that delegation of authority.
And it's just be a lot, thank you, Dan, just be a lot smoother. And like I said, we're at that point, people are ready to go. They're like in the running blocks, ready to go. And we just think it'd be a lot smoother transition. Again, thank you, Todd and Veronica and Marjorie, for all the hard work.
Wonderful, thank you. I have a couple questions for you before you go. I asked the same question, Mr. Trace, about like, what if you don't have an irrigation system? You're gonna get up at 2 in the morning and water your yard? So I asked the same one. But kudos going after the appropriation for the septic to sewer. I know there are intrinsic challenges with that, even if you get the money to put the sewer in place. In that, is there some accommodation for like impact fees and being covered? And I know a lot of people in certain neighborhoods have a challenge with another bill. So I know that that's, I guess you have a plan in place to try to help people make the transition.
Yes, and it'll depend a little bit on total funding, but, the ideal would be that we're able to provide that because of the grant funding, provide that connection. But even if there's some funding limitations on it, when we've done these as well, we'll provide some additional funding assistance over a 20-year payment horizon as well, just on the utility bill. But my hope is we don't even have to do that. That is always a concern of ours. So one of the things before even submitting this, there was a public meeting that was held out in the area, and we did meet with the community, and they were very supportive of connections, with making sure that they didn't have that big bill as their concern, and we absolutely are focused on that.
Wonderful. Yeah, I know. I was involved in a project where we did this, and the connection wasn't as high as we had hoped.
It's interesting because in many cases, I've seen very, very low connection rates, even when the entire upfront bill is covered, and it's over that fear of
The bill.
having that bill on a monthly basis. But, and while, unless there is an intent to mandate connection right then, there's always some uncertainty. I was pleased, and I think, and John was at that public hearing, that public meeting, it wasn't a public hearing, but a public meeting, and the support was there and the desire was there, and recognizing that they had would have that bill, and they're still, because I think they've had, in that particular area, enough flooding issues that I'm sure they're having septic tank failures and incurring some of those really high costs associated with dealing with their septic tanks. So a sewer bill that's predictable and manageable is something that is preferable to those big surprise expenses, and they've experienced it out there.
And the funding would also help remove the septic tank system or stabilize it in some way in their yard?
Yeah, that's the goal, yes.
Okay, great. And my last question was, I know we've talked a lot about it on city council about water conservation and trying to find ways to get people to conserve water. And one topic we've talked about a lot, but we haven't been able to quite get it in place, was about having the stormwater ponds be designed to provide some of the reuse water for the neighborhoods. Is that something that Toho is interested in working with the city on, coming up with some regulations about that?
We absolutely are. I think we've got to be a little cautious on it because in order to get to the level where that those get to be usable as a reliable source, in many instances, they've got to be very, very big and interconnected. So if we can get to that point, great. I think there's some other strategies, and we've talked through some of those, such as allowing common areas to use that as a secondary source to reclaim. And so a little bit more of an integrated strategy where it's not solely the source that's being used.
Sure.
And it's, and also when we get to the common areas, they can be challenging because they're so big, but they also are easier from the standpoint that we're dealing with one entity on use. So I think that those definitely have some potential. One of the areas up at the Hastings Ranch is the old borrow pit there, and that is something that we'll be looking at, trying to permit that as a source. And that is the other area that we expect to have that supplemental well. That is a project we're going to try to expedite as fast as possible, because the challenge is, while you have capacity in your permit for water, right now you're struggling to get it there, which is where all the irrigation demand is. So our goal is to try to get water that we can produce right there to put in the irrigation pipes that we think will go a long way to helping relieve those issues. But it also, we can, the fastest will be the well. The preferred from a permit standpoint is to use the borrow pit.
And would you need to filter that in some way, or is that just put a pipe into the pond? And
A well, we don't have to do anything. The pond has to be treated as if it were reclaimed water, so it needs to go through, it needs to be filtered to get to TSS levels, and it has to have chlorine added to get to the chlorine residual.
Okay.
That's state rule. It's a little odd, because as a subdivision could put a pipe in their stormwater pond and irrigate straight in an area, and as a public utility, if we put it in a public pipe, it now has to meet those standards.
Well, I'll be interested.
And I do have one last
Sure.
comment, though, is back to that conservation. These approaches are critical. The reclaim rate structures are the other place that is critical, and I did talk to you about some of those. There will be some folks that are overusing reclaim, or even some larger systems that are using a lot of reclaim, and we do have conservation rate structures, so that is why we want to make sure that we're communicating with them to prompt those actions ahead of those rates. But rate structures for conservation rates are another critical part.
So it's the first I've heard of city manager using the borrow pit, which is the amenity out there at the ranch for this. So I'd definitely be interested in seeing what the parameters are. I know I don't want a Neo City
Well, and it's
where you're
it's
fluctuating the water by 12 feet
I
or
will,
something.
I will caveat that it is a concept stage, and we're well
Sure.
aware of, and that is a challenge no matter whether it's this location or as stormwater ponds in other areas, because we can't have a lot of drawdown that affects anything. So
Right.
it's something that we do want to pursue, but again, your concerns are something that if it's not viable, then we understand that. But I think, back to your comments, we need to pursue every potential option we can.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the update. It was a lot of information for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, next up is the Citizens Forum. Any person who desires to comment on any item not on this agenda will be provided this opportunity to address the city council. Each person is requested to complete a sign-in form to be provided to the presiding officer prior to or as soon as practical thereafter. The person addresses the council. So we have a few up here. The first one we have is Richard Lawrence.
I think you had to leave.
He left? Yeah, he had to work. Okay. The next one we have is Julius Melendez. If you could come up and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, council members. Thank you, city manager. My name is Julius Melendez with the Osceola County School Board. I also own property here in St. Cloud at 1203 Florida Avenue. And I know our plate is full at the school district, so, it's nice to be able to come to somebody else's board meeting for a while. But I got good news. I got something that I want to help you guys get some more money. I want to help us get us more money as well. I got an email from the superintendent saying on Monday that there's going to be the discretionary sales tax is going to come up for an interlocal agreement draft at their board meeting. And but unfortunately, the funding formula and how that monies are distributed are the same as it was before. So I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here to create positive solutions, because the reality is that the impact of growth doesn't go uneven. It burdens all of us about the same. And so right now, the current sales tax formula is the county gets 50% of those monies. The school district only gets 25%. The city of St. Cloud or city of Kissimmee gets 12%, and the city of St. Cloud only 8%. And as you guys know, that when the school board and the county, technically we're the same kind of geography, but you subtract out the city municipalities, because they're not really, that's not their fiscal responsibility to maintain the cities. Us, the school board, we have to maintain everything. And so for us to only get half the money that the county receives, to me, is really unfair, because we get a huge burden. As a matter of fact, I spoke with staff at Narcoossee Elementary this year. We had to board approve 16 new classroom portables, 2 restroom portables, and 1 administrative portable just at Narcoossee Elementary alone. That's almost the size of an entire school. So the impact that we just can't build schools fast enough, and we have to build another bus barn. We just recently bought property out there on Nova Road, and we're just trying to do the best that we can. We have to repurpose St. Cloud High School and add a wing out there. We got the Ronin project. I'm getting nervous thinking about everything that we got to do, and the county just keeps putting more and more on us. And the same situation happens with the city of St. Cloud. A lot of folks don't realize that every time they grow, even if it's not in the county, they still traverse through the city. I guarantee you, if I look at the chief's police report and he pulls people over, he's not just pulling over people that live in the city of St. Cloud, the St. Cloud residents. He has to arrest and pull people over because of the overall infrastructure strain that's occurring. And so what I'm proposing is that there's an even distribution. Obviously, the county and the school board are bigger. I'm not going to fight over, the minutia of it, but I want it to be 35% each one. That way we're at 75%, right? So instead of being 50-25, we get 35-35. That leaves 30% over. And so I'm proposing the city gets 15-15. So that represents an 8%. You guys are currently at 8%, and you draw down about $5 million. If you go to 15%, you might get an additional $9 million every single year. And so that's real money, because it's not just a one-time appropriation. It's every single year that we collect on the sales tax. And so I know my 3 minutes is almost up, but Madam Chair, can I finish real quick? And I apologize. Again, I'm not here all the time, but I'm just trying to say that the process is, it's an interlocal agreement. We, as a board, can say we disagree with the financial terms, but we agree with an agreement. So right now, they have to put it on, and this is more for the public understanding, even if we have a full agreement, it still has to go for the voters to decide and actually go as a referendum. And I want to make it clear for the public, it's not a sales tax increase. It's a current sales tax that's about to sunset, and we want to maintain the same tax impact to each citizen that lives in Osceola County or in the city. What we're changing is the monies that's collected to get evenly distributed to all of the municipalities in the counties evenly, because that burden gets brought on all of us the same. So I'm not looking to be bigger and better than the county. I'm looking at the two cities get the same 15%. You guys get your increase in funding. The school board gets our increase in funding. I talked to the city manager about this before, so this isn't a surprise. He was like, yeah, Julius, or Mr. Melendez, I'm sorry. He was like, yeah, we can use another fire station. We can use another police station. We can use things to deal with the growth. And so this isn't adding an additional tax burden onto the citizens. This is redistributing the monies that we automatically collect. And again, this isn't about pointing fingers. My board is good at that. I don't want to do that. I'm here to propose a solution that you guys reject what the county does, because I did speak to Dr. Pace. She said they want to do their interlocal agreement using the same formula. Of course, they get 50% of the money, but I just want to humbly ask you guys to help me, because the school board is willing to take a stance. And here's my final say on that. Again, without getting too, personalities into it, the county tried to pass a tax last year on their own with transportation, and it failed. When the school board was supporting the last tax, like this one, it passed, because parents and students, they care about their kids. And so without the school board support, it's really difficult to pass this tax. And so what I'm trying to do is make it equitable, where the city of Kissimmee is getting more money, the city of St. Cloud's getting more money, and the county is getting more money, and then collectively, we can actually pass this. And we're not penalizing the county commission, because if this tax fails, they get zero money. And matter of fact, we all get zero money. So we're just asking them to be nice and play nice in the sandbox. You guys always have these interlocal agreements, and the county is always putting burdens on us. It's time that we collect our fair share and take care of the citizens for that growth. And with that, ma'am, I appreciate the extra time. If you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you. Any comments from our council? Mr. Sturgeon, is that something you could look into? And
We have the calculations of the way it's structured right now, and I'll be glad to show that to you for the ILA. And before that, in briefing, we'll talk about those calculations, what we're estimating our tell will be.
And you're saying it goes to the BOCC Monday?
Yeah, it goes for them to draft, but then it's going to come to you guys after that, because we all have to
Okay.
agree on it. So I'm kind of lobbying you to disagree,
Yeah,
so we
you'll
can go
have
back
a-
to the drawing board and create a new one.
Great.
I'm sorry.
You have an opportunity, you have to approve it, so at a future public meeting, you'll have an opportunity to address it based on what the county approves.
Okay, Mr. Trace?
Thank you. Yeah, well, so a lot of that funding formula back 20 years ago was based on the population, and the population distribution has changed a bunch, especially between the two cities. And then also for the services that the city is providing, that some of that gets double taxed, essentially with paying full property tax to the county and full property tax to the city. We're providing services that the county's not having to provide. So there are some changes, I think, that have to happen to some of the way these funding formulas work. So I'm somewhat in agreement with that, but we'll take a actual full debate and discussion about it once that
And the
comes up.
biggest impact to us, Mr. Trace, to be honest with you, when I first got on the school board in 2020, we were talking about remodeling Gateway High School, because this isn't impact fee monies for new student stations. And I apologize, I'm not talking down to you, I know the public sometimes sees this, and I want them to understand what's going on as well. Gateway High School is exactly what this money goes for. And when I got elected in 2020, our staff said it's going to cost us $80 million to do Gateway. But we didn't have the CM at risk signed yet. It was just a projection. Just this past month, we signed a CM at risk with them. It's $120 million. So in less than a year, we've increased 40, we didn't even increase the scope of services. There was no change orders, just, the same thing that everyone's
Yeah, we're
going
dealing with it
through.
on all our
So
projects,
we
yeah.
can use the money. So I'm like, trust me, it's not like it's extra money just floating out there. We really have difficulty keeping up and paying for the same level of service that we want to provide for all of our
Well,
residents.
and I'm sure Wendy or Ms. Galazzo could give us the specific breakdown, but probably 70% of what we get out of this penny sales tax goes towards fire apparatus and a bunch
That's
of other.
correct. And I have
improvements
that
for the
data
city.
too.
Yeah.
We can show you all that.
So yeah, we'll talk through that once it comes
Thank you.
up as well.
Right.
And I'm willing to support you too. So for the first time, if you want somebody, an ally, I'm here to, if you need some help to step up to the county, and again, this is nice, play nice. I'm not here to point fingers. I just want the citizens to get proper representation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. There's a lot of lights up here.
I think I'll get our question answered offline. These
Okay.
processes, when you're dealing with four governmental entities.
Sure. It's a
Really,
negotiation.
well, it's not even that. We need to figure out the process of when each entity is going to be looking at this particular interlocal agreement and what each entity is going to make a decision to do. So we'll work towards that.
Thank you. Our next request to speak is Ella Whitney. If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ella Whitney. I live at 1850 Big Buck Drive. I'm here regarding the 9.5 acre parcel in Deer Creek that is the subject of Resolution 2022-153R, which has been pulled from tonight's agenda. But I'd like to underscore some issues that we have with it.
Sure.
For the council to consider. As you already know, some years back, home buyers relied on the developer's information and promised that this particular parcel was a conservation area and would remain as such when they were selecting and buying their lots. I have a map that shows that, which you all have seen. But as Deer Creek residents have come to realize, the developer lied. Many Deer Creek residents moved here because of the abundant variety of wildlife and peacefulness our wild spaces provide. It is an undisputed fact that materially altering the complexion of that 9.5 acre parcel would extinguish a valuable wildlife habitat. On 2 separate occasions in the last 2 years, Deer Creek strongly objected to developers buying and building additional homes on that parcel. And now the city wants to buy the land and build a public park. How is that a good thing for Deer Creek? A public park will add more traffic to our already overloaded and neglected residential streets. While it is true that a traffic signal is forthcoming, that signal will serve to allow residents to safely exit the community at last. It will not solve our existing traffic load and speeding issues, and it certainly will not address the additional traffic a public park will create. A public park will bring an influx of non-resident traffic, noise, light pollution, strangers, and inevitable crime to a secluded and largely isolated enclave deep inside our subdivision. It will adversely affect our property values, our resale values, our vehicle and property insurance costs, and our stormwater management. And it will destroy our ability to peacefully enjoy our properties. It is disappointing that the city appears to have given no consideration to Deer Creek or its needs before drafting this resolution to purchase and develop this property, especially considering that development of this land was the focus of overwhelming and unified community objection and protest twice in the relatively recent past. Deer Creek residents only found out about this resolution yesterday, about 24 hours before it was scheduled to be put to a final vote. The absence of communication about this from the city sends a clear message to our 647 households that what Deer Creek thinks and needs as a community is irrelevant. Without question, your plan to put a public park on this parcel would have a profound negative and permanent impact on the homeowners and residents of Deer Creek. While all of you may live in St. Cloud, none of you live in Deer Creek, so none of you would have to live with the day-to-day consequences should you ultimately vote to adopt this resolution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Rocco Caputo? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor. Mayor's not here. Deputy Mayor and council members. My name is Rocco Caputo. I live at 1850 Big Buck Drive. I urge the council to reject Resolution 2022-153R, which would spend $950,000 to purchase about 9.5 acres of vacant property within and completely surrounded by Deer Creek subdivision. Parks and Recreation's goal for this land is, and I quote, to ensure that all city residents remain within a 10-minute walk to a neighborhood park or a 5-minute drive to a community park. Additionally, St. Cloud's envisioned citywide master plan sought to resolve 2 issues with existing parks. Again, I quote, 1, they are not effectively distributed throughout the community, and 2, they are highly dependent on automobile access. I present that the parcel under consideration is ineffective at satisfying any of these criteria. The parcel is a poor choice for a community park since access to and from it requires a 4-minute drive through a single subdivision. Virtually nobody outside of Deer Creek lives within a 5-minute drive of this land. And as a community park embedded within a single subdivision, the parcel would create an isolated public park district unrelated to the surrounding residential district. The parcel is a poor choice for a neighborhood park as its location puts the majority of Deer Creek over 10 minutes away on foot. Furthermore, its size and cost are out of scale with a single subdivision's needs. Additionally, the question of whether Deer Creek wants this park has never been addressed. It would be wise to work with its host neighborhood to resolve potential issues before committing to spend nearly $1 million. For example, last September, Deer Creek's homeowners opposed a plan to develop that land so strongly that the proposal was withdrawn before being heard by the Planning Commission. A petition against that development received 385 signatures, or about 60% of the 647 homes within the subdivision. Based on responses to that petition, Deer Creek residents primarily want to preserve wild spaces and the wildlife living within them. We also feel that our roads are insufficient for existing residential traffic, let alone the additional congestion and safety issues that public traffic through our neighborhood would create. In closing, before this council incurs significant expense on this land, I strongly feel it would be prudent to reconsider carefully the cost versus the city's sought-after benefits and the impact on the needs of the community within which it would be located. In doing so, I believe the council would independently recognize the deficiencies I have laid out. Therefore, I again urge the council to reject Resolution 2022-153R. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next portion of tonight's meeting is the consent agenda, which contains items that have been determined to be routine and non-controversial. If anyone in the audience wishes to address a particular item on the consent agenda, now is the opportunity for you to do so. Additionally, if staff or members of City Council wish to speak on a consent item, they have the same opportunity. So I'll ask the City Council if you have any comments or would like to pull in any items for discussion or a separate vote. Okay, seeing and hearing none. Is there any requests to speak on any item? Seeing and hearing none. I'll open it up to council for a motion or discussion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Askew, a second by Mr. Trace. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Trace.
Aye.
Councilmember Urban.
Aye.
Councilmember Askew.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, the next section of tonight's meeting is the public hearings. Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2022-30, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, to annex into the City of St. Cloud approximately 0.254 acres identified as St. Cloud Marketplace located south of East Earl Bronson Memorial Highway, east of Hickory Tree Road, and north of Live Oak Boulevard, in accordance with the voluntary annexation provision of Chapter 171.044 Florida statutes.
Would you like us to read in the next two items?
Yes,
Okay.
please. First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2022-32, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, assigning a future land use designation of commercial to approximately 0.254 acres identified as St. Cloud Marketplace, located south of East Earl Bronson Memorial Highway, east of Hickory Tree Road, and north of Live Oaks Boulevard, providing for the amending of the official future land use map of the comprehensive plan, filing of the Planning Commission, recommendation and proof of publication, suburbility, and effective date. First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2022-33, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, providing for the zoning amendment of the zoning map of the Land Development Code of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, specifically change the zoning designation of approximately 0.254 acres identified as St. Cloud Marketplace from AC Agriculture County to HB Highway Business City zoning designation with a commercial future land use designation adopted by ordinance number 2022-32, generally located south of East Arlo Bronson Memorial Highway, east of Hickory Tree Road, and north of Live Oaks Boulevard, providing for entering the designation on the official zoning map, filing of the Planning Commission, recommendation and proof of publication, suburbility, and effective date.
Thank you. Good evening, Dagmary Segarra, Planning Manager. In front of you, the request is for an annexation request, comp plan amendment request, and a zoning map amendment request for a property approximately .254 acres located south of East Arlo Bronson Memorial Highway, east of Hickory Tree Road, north of Light Oak Boulevard. In reference to the annexation, the property is contiguous and reasonable compact adjacent to the city limits. The existing county future land use is low-density residential, and the existing county zoning is agricultural development and conservation. The proposed future land use in the city is commercial, and the proposed zoning is highway business for the city. The development is compatible with the surrounding areas, and there is no adverse impacts on the city's facility. This is the location of the strip of land. This strip of land is going to, the reason that it's being annexed into the city is because it's going to be part of the development to the west, which is going to be the St. Cloud Marketplace, and this will have the continuity into the Thompson's Grove access. This, as you can see in the future land use map, is designated as commercial, and in the zoning map, is designated as a highway business. It meets the strategic goal of growth management. At DRC, we recommend approval, and the Planning Commission this past June 23rd, on Tuesday, they recommended approval of the request. It is the staff recommendation that the City Council approve the annexation, the comprehensive plan, and the zoning amendment as stated in title. The applicant is here to answer any questions, and I'll be glad to answer any questions as well.
Okay, do I have any discussion by council on this item?
I want to ask for public comment.
First?
Sure.
Oh, that's not what her directions have.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, the applicant is also here to answer any questions.
Yes. So you want to ask for the applicant first and then public? I didn't write the instructions, so I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Typically they're handled by, first you ask for the applicant, then the public, then
Okay.
back to the council.
Okay, sorry, I was handed another slip here. It says that there's a citizen in the back of the room that said he wasn't called. I called all the slips that I have except Richard Lawrence, but they said he left the room.
So why don't we, if we could, why don't we finish his items and then you can circle back?
Okay. So first, I'll take any public comment on item number 1, ordinance number 2022-30.
And actually, you read them all together, so the public comment can be on all
On all of
three.
them? 2022-30, 32, or 33? Okay. Are there any comments by council?
Motion to approve.
I actually have a comment, so I don't know how to work it without whatever. But some of us on council were up here when these developments came in, and we had a large group of people show up from the neighborhood, Live Oak Estates, and there was a lot of concern about interconnecting, and we wanted the development to connect to the east, but there was a spite strip, and we were unable to connect to the east. And so there was a lot of discussion about connecting across and all the traffic that would go into Live Oak Estates, and their entrance is strange, if you've ever driven in it. So I do have some concerns about this and the access plan, and I know this is a first reading. I asked the city manager if he would present their site layout to the traffic engineers at Osceola County, since the city doesn't have traffic engineers, to give a comment on it. I'm okay moving it forward because it's first reading, but I just want the applicant to know if they're here. I do have some concerns about access and making this connection and tying into Live Oak Estates and the alignment of entrances and things like that. So I definitely will want to have that information resolved before it comes for the second meeting. Are you the applicant?
Good evening, Council. Nathan Milch with Gimli Horn and Associates, representing the applicant. I just wanted to get on the record that we are amenable to working with staff prior to the second reading and request approval tonight respectfully.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Trace.
Well, my thought behind this is the spike strip that was stopping it before, so now they can make the connection to the east?
It is, but now they've got 2 connections into Live Oak Estates. I think the time to have this negotiation is when we have an item on council for me. Like, I would like to work all these details out before you make the connection, and it's kind of too late. But like I said, I'm willing to move it forward. The applicant is saying he'll work with staff. I'd just like to have those details worked out, because you're going to potentially push however many people are in Thompson Groves through into Live Oak Estates, and we promised the community that we wouldn't do that. So I have a motion from Mr. Askew and a second by Mr. Trace.
Sure, second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you did. Sorry. Mr. Urban, sorry. I will ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
This is for
Item
ordinance
1.
20-22-30.
2022-30.
Yes.
Councilmember Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
So I'll entertain a motion on 2022-32, please.
Motion to approve. Second.
Got a motion from Mr. Askew, a second by Mr. Urban. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Councilmember Urban?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
And I'll entertain a motion for 2022-33.
Motion to approve. Second.
A motion from Councilmember Askew, a second by Councilmember Urban. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Councilmember Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, so now we have the resident in the rear.
Well, Deputy
of the
Mayor,
room.
can I make a comment about that, just to everybody, in the item
Sure.
that you just did? So the discussion about looking at this early on is good, but, and it's a great point you're making. The good news here is you're going to see this not only at your final adoption, but you will see it at in a future meeting, because this is, as I understand it, is going to require a commercial subdivision. You'll have to see a preliminary site plan, which you'll be able to work on a lot of those axes. You're going to see this more than just at their next meeting. You'll see it ahead again at a future meeting too, to address those issues. So it's a good time to have this discussion now, so all those things can be incorporated into your final plan that you'll get to approve at a later date.
Great. So the resident in the rear of the room. I'm sorry, I didn't have a slip for you. I don't know where it went.
I'm not sure where it is
Unless
either,
you're
but
Richard
whoever's got it,
Lawrence.
enjoy it. My name is Brandon Lundgren, and I live at 5688 Western Sun Drive in the Estates of Westerly in St. Cloud. Want to jog your memories to the previous 2 city council meetings real quick for just a second to kind of consolidate the time here. Mr. and Mrs. Long own property that's in the unincorporated portion of the county that borders with our subdivision. And they have drainage issues and a bunch of stuff with the developer and with the city and the property line and stuff like that. So hopefully you can recall some of those issues from previous experience there. I am one of those residences that has that property dispute and all that stuff. Now, I'm a personal friend of the Longs and everything. From the evidence that I've seen, it looks like it's theirs and that they have a valid case in point and everything on all of that. So I don't have any dispute with any of that portion of it. What I do have, though, is I received a phone call today from code enforcement, from Officer Miller, wanting to come out and inspect to see if, I guess there'd been a complaint that we had chickens that were not allowed or something like that. She wanted to inspect to make sure that we didn't have chickens in our backyard. So she came over, she inspected. I had already dug up the pin of our property line to show where the property line was and where chickens were versus on our property. Made it very obvious and easy for her. And she proceeded to explain why she couldn't tell if they were on our property or not because of this entire dispute with the Longs. So she didn't know if we were in violation of anything or not. And then at the conclusion of that, she handed me a letter that is a courtesy notice from the building department of a code violation of our fence proceeding over across the property line that goes onto the Longs' property. It says that they received a complaint today about this. I have 10 days to correct this. Now, when I applied for my permit, you guys have probably seen the paperwork from Mr. and Mrs. Long. I provided extreme detail on exactly where that fence was going, how. I went to the extent of pulling up a satellite image of Google Maps and painting a red line exactly where this fence was. And it's very detailed. The length of the fence, everything. It went through, and I was issued the permit. It was inspected afterwards. Everything was signed off on. And now they want to say that the fence isn't on my property, that I went rogue as a property owner and built this fence off the property line and all this stuff against what they had approved. It's obvious they got all that information when I submitted the permit to them. I asked her, I said, if you can't determine whether or not this is my property line for chickens, how can you determine that this is my property line for a fence? It's the exact same issue that we're dealing with here. So why am I getting an issue or a citation here, a courtesy notice from the city about correcting something in 10 days, saying that I'll be fined if not, if we don't know what the resolution is in this entire thing? Not only that, but the city went through and had every opportunity to correct this in the first place and catch this if there was anything wrong or anything that they suspected on any of this. They didn't. And so if that fence needs to be moved, ultimately, it's the building department that needs to go over and move the dang fence. That's my complaint. There's a ton of negligence here. The inspector didn't inspect. And I'm concerned that that's happening more and more within our city. I have video surveillance of when the final sign-off happened on that fence. He walked out of his car, walked over to the front gate on the front of my property, grabbed the permit out, signed it, stuck it back in the pouch, and drove off. There was no inspection of anything. And I think that's pretty common within our neighborhood, and I'm sure it's not just our neighborhood, but the rest of the city. So if you have any questions, that's the situation that I'm here about.
Mr. Trace.
Sorry, my light was on from before, but, so yeah, this is ongoing issue. I think Mr. Surgeon, staff is looking into it for the whole block of you guys.
And I would, if I could, I'd caution the council about having a discussion on this right now. I agree with the gentleman that there probably needs to be additional work done, looked at before this proceeds beyond a courtesy notice on a code enforcement issue, and we certainly can take care of that. But as you all know from the last couple of meetings, there's a lot of moving parts to this, and there's a lot of verification that needs to be done with regard to the property lines that are there and the location of certain improvements on some of these neighbors associated with the first neighbor that brought the question before you. So as we work through that, we can do that. I think the city manager obviously can coordinate with code enforcement staff and basically provide some information not to proceed with code enforcement actions until we've completely verified what direction these things are going to move.
Mr. Trace?
Yeah, so is this something that we need to solve this, hire a surveyor to lay that out properly? Because we own property on the side of the Longs property as well, over by a lift station, and we might be encroaching or having
To
the same
the
issue.
certain
if there's-
extent that
if
the
it's an
city
issue.
has placed improvements on property that might encroach onto a neighboring property, then we would certainly advise the city to get its own survey and address the placement of its improvements on, and whether it's on city property or on somebody else's property, we certainly would do that.
Yeah, and I don't think we constructed those improvements. I think it's something that was built with the community and then turned over at plat to the city, so just.
Well,
they
but
could be-
the city is now the owner of those improvements due to the turnover.
Yeah.
The same way, some of these fences that are out there may not have been constructed by the current owners of them, may have been constructed by a prior owner, and when they bought the house, they took the fence with it. So we would certainly recommend that for the city's property. Each property owner, unfortunately, the law says you can't build an improvement on someone else's property. And that's basically the way law is. So each individual property owner either has to establish that that fence is on their property, or the other folks need to establish that the fence is on the neighboring property owner, and then it becomes a property dispute among two neighboring property owners.
I thought the saying went, fences make good neighbors, but I guess we're not. No?
Again, you've heard this before, and I think there's a lot of additional information that has to be get before this council can get involved in it. Code enforcement is a process that's in place. If any individual, if a code enforcement action proceeds, it requires a ultimate hearing in front of the special magistrate, which time any property owner and a respondent has the right to argue their case in front of a special magistrate as to why a code shouldn't be in place, shouldn't be violated.
Well, and is this something we need to give direction? Because once you start the process goes automatically, right?
No,
Is this
I don't
something
think
we
it's
need to give
anything, because
direction?
there's been plenty of discussions with staff. I've been involved in a few of them that we understand that this needs to get worked out. I will admit, I wasn't aware of any additional code violations that had been, courtesy violations that have been issued. But we certainly have been looking at it to date. And,
And I'd highly recommend that you guys take a look at Bob Deathridge and his responsibility and accountability in some of this. He was, by Officer Miller, who came out today, he was specifically given to me by name that he would be the point of contact on this, and that he was the one who had ordered this to happen. I immediately followed up when she left with phone calls into him and got to speak to Ben today, and I know he's familiar with the situation. This is something that's been talked about. It's not something that he's blind to. And he proceeded to stick his head in the sand and act like he knew nothing about it and that he hadn't given that order today for this to happen. So I'm pretty ticked off about it, and it's not going to end with me right here. This is something that it's going to affect the city in the long run, not just in this instance, but if this is happening within the building department, I promise it's happened more than once where permits have been issued and they not rightfully so. And so, yeah, I'm going to make sure that people are held liable and accountable for it.
City Manager?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, thank you. Again, a reminder to council and to the citizens that the staff works for the city manager, and I'd like a copy of that video if you'd provide it, and I'd like to investigate that on that inspection. And I want to assure you that is not a standard operating procedure for this city. We expect people to do their job and do it properly, and, that's my responsibility. But I'd like to look into it further.
Absolutely. Yeah, appreciate it.
Can you I'll give you a card and you can give me the video?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
For
Thank
sure.
you.
Yep.
Are you Mr. Long?
I am. I didn't intend to address, obviously I didn't sign up, but maybe I could just take a minute with a couple suggestions, if it would be all right. I can fill out a paper.
Sure.
And you can give me
Quick,
maybe
we need
1
to do
minute.
the timer, like, we're not doing the timer anymore. And then when you get done, you'll need to fill out
My
a form.
question is maybe we need to get the engineer of record, the builders, the city together. I've got 15 surveys. I have the original survey with a quit claim deed when they started this in 2015. I have a survey with the plot from the engineer of record. I have all the individual surveys from when the homeowners bought those lots and homes. Then I have the survey from when I purchased it, which all, as far as I can tell, show the same information. So I'm not sure why we can't settle on where this property line is. The other thing that needs to happen maybe is with one of the builders to clarify what a modified A lot is, because it was an interesting conversation I had about runoff with them. So I think there's a meeting that can happen to clarify this. It sure has taken a lot of comments in your city council meetings, but certainly we've got documents that are provided by engineers, by surveying companies that should be able to sort some of this out.
City Manager, do you think, has there been a meeting out on site with people? I do feel the same way as this is a lot of conversation for something that shouldn't be this complicated.
Certainly, I even had a neighbor call the police and file a police report against me that was mad that had gotten a similar thing happen, I'm assuming, as Brandon just talked about. Had nothing to do with me, but I'm who he has taken it out on. I have been the vengeance that he is seeking because I'm establishing a property line, unfortunately.
And if I could simply, we do need some direction from the council on this, I think. This is a property dispute among neighboring property owners, and we do need some direction as to how much do you want the city to get involved in this. This is an issue where it happens often in the state of Florida, where property owners have disputes over property lines and property boundaries, and surveyors are brought in, and there ultimately is a determination. But I don't think the city council wants the city staff to be the arbitrator of what survey is correct and where that property line is. That's what courts are for. And so we do need some. The question came up is what type of direction do we need from the council? I think we do need, how much does do you want the city staff to be involved in this? Because this is going to ultimately be a civil dispute among property owners.
Personally, I feel like we have a seat at the table because we issued all these fence permits that weren't built in the right place.
I apologize. So the permits authorize the construction of a permit on the applicant's property. It doesn't, that's how they're authorized. So if a permit is issued for a fence, it's issued for you to build your fence on your property. If the fence contractor or the owner of the property builds the fence over the property line, that's not authorized by the permit. So in reality, that is an unpermitted fence if it's located off of the property line. We can't approve a permit, the city can't approve a permit to build a fence on somebody else's property.
So what are we inspecting?
Essentially, my understanding is they're inspecting the construction of the permit, but the city's process and most cities' process do not require for an as-built survey showing the location of the fence.
Certainly, the city was involved in the development that was built
I don't want to
here.
get in an argument
Yeah,
about this, sir. There's a lot of issues involved with this. And, you know, part of this reason is frankly, part of the reason why code enforcement started looking at these issues was because there was complaints raised by, I believe by you, about properties being unpermitted and fences being placed on your property, which is why the code enforcement process
Yeah.
started. And so we're trying to get to the bottom of it, trying to figure it out, but it ultimately is going to be a civil issue among the property owners, I'm afraid.
I think that's,
So other council members, how do you feel on that?
I'm typically, there's a concrete monument at the corners
Right.
of all the plats, so
they all exist.
find the two of them.
That's why I don't understand the difficulty. They all exist.
Right.
But we seem to have a lot of people who stand back and say, well, it's a gray area. There's no gray area as far as I'm concerned. I have 15 surveys that say where that property line is. If somebody can give me something different, I'd like to see that. I have not seen that yet. I think it's okay for a city to say it's a civil matter because it's not coming out of your pocket to fight the civil matter. When it's going to cost me $100,000 to fight over a quarter or a half acre property, then certainly I have a different feeling than that. You know, when I see across the street they've sold 12 acres and want to build 40 houses, I'm concerned because I'm getting the runoff already from Westernly Estates. So I am concerned that the city is being irresponsible with what they're doing. When I see a whole community stamped off, approved in one day through the process, and maybe they're just saying that the documentation was there, but certainly we've seen the fallout of what's happened in my case.
Can can the city engineer go out and review the documents and give an opinion?
I don't think the city engineer will give an opinion on that.
They've been out. They're familiar with it. Certainly.
Okay, other council members, that.
You had, just for a way of, you had another individual who's not here today who came in and said they have a survey that's different than the survey that Mr. Long has mentioned. So whether they do or not, I don't know, but that's what they've said. I haven't looked at any of the surveyors. I don't think any engineer or surveyor associated with the city has looked at any of those, but that's.
And is the developer still out there?
I
are
don't
there
know.
still open lots? I just feel like there should be some conversation.
And I'll leave this with you. This was submitted with my permit application.
I believe you. I think the issue is they're not checking whether it's on the property or not, is what's happening.
In the entire process, from the application all the way through to inspection.
And respectfully, when we've been working with local government for a lot of years, and this is pretty common around the state. It is expensive for a property owner to get an as-built survey to show where a fence is being built, and typically most communities do not require them because most people are building residential fences on their property. Now, when the subdivision was built, if the fence was built then, or walls are built at that time, then yes, that's when it's done because it's done as part of the development of the subdivision. But I don't know if that happened in this case. So I think I really caution you, if you want to continue to have sort of a suited argument over what's right in this particular case at a council meeting, that's fine, but we need to get more information about what's really going on here.
I have one question. What happens then when if you decide to wash your hands, I want to move ahead with where I have 15 surveys that show my property, and I have a neighbor who wants to call the police and file crazy reports like has happened. I think you got emailed a copy of a report that happened when that neighbor approached me. I'm sure the police department's got better things to do than come listen to a silly dispute about a property line, to me that is well documented.
Okay, well, it doesn't sound like we have any solution to this.
If you want.
Mr. Urban?
I would personally, this is very frustrating, obviously, and I don't know what the solution is, but at the very least, can we make sure that this doesn't happen again with future developments? I'm not sure what.
And I guess to be a little more, I don't think we know what the solution is because we don't have all the facts and all the information. And so the real question is, obviously, it's up to the city manager, but you can give direction to the city manager to participate in some sort of discussion process with all the neighboring property owners to try to get it to work on.
I think that's
I
the
think that's a
least
good
we
idea.
can
I
do.
think that's sort of, so.
I will do that.
Mr. Trace?
Okay, that's what I was going to bring up. And just if you guys can provide that documentation and stuff, you guys have copies of those, we can, I'm sure it's under the city manager's threshold to be able to spend a couple $1,000 on getting a surveyor to make sure that all this is reviewed and right. So I'm fine with that.
All right, well, I took a lot of time, thank you.
Fill out a form, please. Okay, the next item on our agenda is 2022-34. Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2022-34, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, amending Article 8, Elections, Section 8.05, Nominations, clarifying the nomination process for a candidate to qualify for election to a council seat, revising the amount to be paid as a qualifying fee and election assessment fee, removing the set period for qualifying, and providing that the qualifying period for each election shall be set by resolution of the City Council in accordance with the State Election Code, providing an effective date for the amendment, providing for a referendum on the amendment, providing for the title, explanatory statement of the ballot for the amendment, referendum, providing for severability and conflict.
Okay. Now I'm confused. Which way am I doing this, public comment or council?
Well, right now, if I could.
Sure.
Okay, this is
Mix it
obvious.
up.
This is obviously the introduction of, we talked to you about additional charter amendment language that we were going to be working on. And this is one that is addressed to address the qualifying period and fees. Just a little background on this. Mrs. Jaworski in the clerk's office has been working with the supervisor of elections. As you know, for years, the supervisor of elections has essentially handled the city's elections. When the charter provisions were written, the charter provisions were written based on what was going on at the time, where basically municipalities conducted their own elections. And over the years, it became apparent and cost-effective for the city to essentially enter into a contract with the supervisor of elections to essentially pay the supervisor of elections to run their election, obviously. And the alternative to the city was you'd have to get all the election equipment, you'd have to hire the poll workers, you'd have to do all those things that the supervisor of elections is set up to do for the county already. Over the years, the supervisor of elections has talked to us about essentially unifying the city's charter provisions to be consistent more with state law and some other things that are going on, so to make it essentially a little bit more uniform so that we can do it, and that's what these amendments are changing. So this one is 2 points that we've come up that are in the chart, and the first is related to the qualifying period. Currently, the qualifying period is actually established in the charter, and what this amendment would do, if it's approved by the voters, it would essentially allow the city council, in preparation for an upcoming election, to set the qualifying period based on the supervisor for elections needs, based on what the supervisor of election has to perform to give them enough time to go through the qualifying period and prepare it. By way of an example, a couple of years ago, I think very recently, maybe it was two sessions ago, there was language changed in the statute that required printing of ballots that the supervisor of elections has to comply with, which is actually inconsistent with the qualifying period as it's currently established by charter. So this is more of a perfunctory or a sort of an administrative deal. The other one has to do, can you go back to the red line or the strike-through version of this? Whoever's got the clicker. Okay. Well, I don't have it in front of me, so there you go. And the other piece of this is to address there are two fees that are paid. Obviously, there's the 25 qualified voters of the city that are you can get the petition signed to qualify. The other way to do it is to pay a percentage fee of the annual salary for the city council. Currently, the charter has it at 5%. This would reduce it to 3%. That was something that the Supervisor of Elections has recommended to us to make it more consistent with what other jurisdictions do in the state. The other part of the change, because there has been some confusion, the Supervisor of Elections and the Clerk's Office, when it comes to candidates, the state requires a separate election fee that has to be paid. I believe it's 1% of the salary, Linda, and that is set by state statute. So it's been a little confusing for candidates because currently there's a 5% fee plus there's a state fee of 1%. So we suggest the Supervisor for Elections added language that would identify that there's also a state elections code fee that would have to be paid. So these changes the three changes that are in here would establish, the qualifying period would be established by resolution of the council, and then the 3% of the annual salary fee in lieu of obtaining 25 qualified voters on a petition the amendment would be to 3% from 5% of the salary, and clarification to show that there's an additional 1% state fee that has to be paid. Again, this is first reading. We recommend moving forward. If the council approves it at the final adoption, it'll be on the November ballot for approval by the voters.
Okay, do we have any comment or discussion from council?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for Mr. Askew. Second for me. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Urban.
Aye.
Councilmember Askew.
Aye.
Councilmember Trace.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2022-35, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, amending Article 8, Elections, Section 8.05, Nominations, providing that ballots for City Council elections shall be set shall be set forth in the state election code, and removing the requirements of two candidates have the same surname. Each candidate's residence address shall be included on the ballot, providing an effective date for the amendment, providing for the referendum of the amendment, providing for the title and explanatory statement of the ballot for the amendment referendum, providing for severability and conflict.
And
Mr.
again,
Manzares?
this is another cleanup, essentially a cleanup charter provision that the Supervisor of Elections has suggested. Apparently, and I was unaware of this, they have commented for years about this language in here that would require the address to be placed on the ballot. It is, as far as I know, it has never happened, so we never had to deal with it, but it's sort of been, for their perspective, a ticking problem, obviously, that the Supervisor likes. So since we were going through this whole process, we thought, okay, they've asked, so we would like to bring it forward. So this provision would move that, this amendment, if approved by the voters, would remove that provision, so that two or more individuals that have the same last name, essentially, we would not, the addresses, their personal addresses would not have to be included on the ballot. It also cleans up some language related to the legal names that are in the same section, and also clearly makes the language qualification consistent with other parts of the charter, as opposed to nominated for membership, which is some antiquated language that's been in there. So again, we're recommending approval. This is first reading. If it gets, if the City Council approves it at final reading, it'll be on the November ballot for consideration by the voters.
Okay, I'll open it up for council comment or motion. Mr. Trace?
This is just a question kind of related to this, but not really. Do we know if the ballot this year is going to be super long? Because we have 3 charter amendments on there. Are there a bunch of state amendments? I haven't seen any talk about anything.
I don't think there's any, I don't know if there's any statewide, but if it's a good question. If you like, we can do a little bit more research on that before it comes back for final adoption, because you're right. Some of these ballots can get really
I forget.
cumbersome.
It might have been 4 years ago. Like, it was like onto 3 separate pages, front and back, because it's English and Spanish and all these long things. And I'm like, people aren't getting, because ours are always last, right? So people get to the end and they're like, Christmas tree.
Right.
I could add with the discussion with the supervisor elections, that she is saving space on the ballot for these issues.
Okay.
Well, we can also
I'm aware
check
of
on
that.
on that for you and just get
I
some
just don't know
information
how
about
many.
what the ballot looks, what we anticipate the ballot's going, because even if she's saving space, it could be still a long ballot.
Yeah, fourth page, you know. So I just want to make sure that people are making informed decisions and will take the time to read this on the ballot. But if it's on the 5th page, like, you know, it's just, okay.
And, yeah, so we can, yeah, we'll provide that information if you, by the next meeting.
And then for future charter amendments, you know, is this something that we should, you know, periodically bring up a charter review commission for stuff like this? Because there's, you know, this is stuff that's brought up by supervisor of elections because it could create problems for them, but like, are there other things that we need to be looking at that?
That would be up to the council. It's been several years since you've had a charter review commission actually go through the charter here. And obviously, council could, you know, could seat a charter review commission and do a complete review of the charter. We typically try to look at if there's an issue, and let's fix the issue. If there's not an issue that raises itself, we don't typically address it because it is somewhat of a cumbersome process to get the charter changed.
Yeah,
But
well,
that's
because
entirely-
my problem with these, and that's kind of why I voted against the last one, was, you know, our deadline is 2 months from now to get this on the ballot, and it's like, all right, these are somewhat legitimate issues that we should clear up, but I'd rather go through that process because that's kind of why we put citizen input on a lot of this stuff, so.
I would like to add
In the
that,
future.
to remind the council, we do have a legal review going on now with the charter and the code. So that should be completed by the end of the summer. And if there are any problems that conflict, the lawyers in Tallahassee will let us know and we can address those. And that we could use that to also have a committee.
Yep, and then typically when they do the legal review, that's talking about, they'll identify provisions in the charter that are inconsistent with state law. However, you know, state law basically renders those, any charter provision that the city has that's inconsistent with state law is basically unenforceable. So the language might be in your charter, but it's not applicable if the state has preempted you on it. So they typically advise that, and they say, okay, you should take this out of your charter at some point and clean it up. I think, Mr. Trace, what you're looking at is what's there that's still in place, that's still effective, that may be of issue or needs to be reviewed, and, you know.
Yeah, definitely, and a lot of the big issues that, you know, nonpartisan elections are already kind of handled, right? So we don't have to deal with that, but it's just, there might be other glaring things that we could fix and should fix going through the proper process. But with all that said, motion to approve resolution, or ordinance 2022-35.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Trace, a second from Councilmember Askew. Do I have any public comment? Seeing and hearing, oh, yes, Mr. Davis. State your name and address for the record, and please fill out a form.
Darren Davis, Hickory Tree Road. I had a gal call me the other day from CDD, and they're doing an update on their board. And they said 2 people from the same house, I don't know if it's husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, have signed up for 2 spots on the board. Can 2 people from the same household serve on a board?
I'm not the counsel of that community development district. I don't know
Well,
what's going on.
can they do it on the city council?
Can they do it on the city council?
If husband and wife both wanted to run for seats.
I'm not sure what relevance that has to the item that's in front of the city council right
I'm just
now.
asking for it because it's a amendment.
It doesn't, I can give you an answer. It depends. Actually, that's a lawyer answer. I mean, 2 people, if you want to, if you really, 2 people can live in the same household, and as long as they're not relatives, or they're not related, or they don't share public record, or they don't violate the Sunshine Law, they probably could serve on the city council.
Well, their husband and wife, they'd be related, wouldn't
I've
they?
said it depends on what the facts are, and all
okay.
I've got is some hypothetical issues.
Well, then I'm sure they can share the CDD's district council's contact information with you if you want to ask that question to them as well.
All right, Madam Clerk, let's please call the roll.
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Councilmember Urban?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
First reading and introduction for ordinance number 2022-37, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, amending Article 3, zoning regulations, Division 19, signs regulations, sections 3.19.6, prohibited signs and characteristics of the Land Development Code, amending the section to provide that specified portable and vehicle signs, subject to exemptions, shall be prohibited in the city, providing for severability, conflict, codification, and effective date.
Good evening, Dagmar Segarra, planner, planning manager. Sorry, I forgot my own title. The item in front of you is a amendment to the Land Development Code, Article 3. The ordinance number is 2022-37. It is an amendment to amend the city sign regulations to address concerns related to the sign on vehicles, and it would update Section 3.19.6 of the Land Development Code by establishing regulations for exceptions. Division 19, which regulates signs throughout the city, is going to be amended with the following language on number 13, that attach signs on any vehicles have to be subject to the following exception. Basically what it's saying that if the vehicle is parked on a private property, they need to be screened, so not to allow the sign to be viewed from public right away. B, basically what it says that if any vehicle or the company, it is parked in such a way during operating hours that such vehicle not be routinely parked on that location where it serves as some sort of additional signage. And C exempts the buses, taxi cabs, or similar carriers, which would allow, it would apply to the vehicle authorized under Section 3.20.8 of the Land Development Code. Also, there's an additional strike-through to A, number 8. We are deleting the for vehicle signs on that sentence, which it will finally read, signs of a portable or movable nature except those provided under Section 19.9, temporary signs. It meets the strategic goals of growth management. DRC recommended approval. Planning Commission this past Tuesday recommended denial due to the concerns that this might affect private citizens that own vehicles that they have businesses with vehicles with their signs, and they feel that there is not enough language in the code that will protect those type of citizens. Staff concurs with the recommendation with the recommendation of Planning Commission that we could revise the proposed amendment to include language to protect residential or private citizens to park and be exempt from this language. And we can make that amendment between today and the second hearing. But right now, we request the City Council either to approve it as it is or to approve it with further changes to what is being proposed to allow that exemptions to the residential components or residents. This concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. City Attorney.
Yes, so what this was a comment that came up at the Planning and Zoning Commission, which frankly they did a good job. They looked at it and they identified something that was maybe needed a little bit more tweaking in the proposed ordinance, so we agreed with that. So what Dagmaria is talking about is in Section 13A. If you can go back to 13A, there you go. So where it says if the vehicle is parked on private property, to be more specific, the question they asked, as I understand it, was, well, private property could apply to somebody's residence, and if they have those magnetic signs on their signs and they're parked in their driveway. And so we kind of agreed that that wasn't what was intended by that language, but that language could read that way. So our suggestion was going to be if the vehicle is parked on non-residential private property, or not, it just could be non-residential property, that, so though it would only apply to basically businesses and commercial properties, which in reality, which is the intent of this provision. So that you're also aware, you might say, well, why are we're only concerned about the residential commercial? Well, there's a couple issues that come up with that. First of all, your code already has provisions in it that deals with the parking of commercial vehicles in residential areas and limits the size of vehicles that can be parked. The second one is many homeowners associations have restrictions in their deeds, covenants, and restrictions regarding commercial vehicles with signage being parked on it. So we think there's ample regulation already to deal with residences, and that wasn't the intent of this proposed change. So we think then the amendment that Dagmary's talking about would be to change 13A to have it only apply to non-residential private property. Thank you.
Okay, I'll open it up to council for discussion and/or motion. Councilmember Askew.
Mr. Manzarek, I just wanted to get some clarification on the private property. So you're saying that there's a vehicle that's parked on that private property if it's large in size? What do you mean by that? Like a semi-truck?
You mean in the residential area?
Yeah.
The code currently provides, I believe it's 1.5 tons. A vehicle over 1.5 tons is considered a commercial vehicle and can't be parked in a residential. I think they get it right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
A motion? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Tracy.
And I agree with the change. I mean, this is such a short section of code of all the, the signs you can't have, and then there's this long section that we're adding of where you can have the signs in these cases. So it just, some of this verbiage is cumbersome and can lead to interpretation. I understand what we're trying to get at is there's people parking massive vehicles in the grass in businesses with uplights on them, and it's a billboard, it's a sign, it's not a vehicle parked in a parking spot. So I'm fine with making the changes if we can clarify this language some. And then, yeah, I've got friends that have like F-150s and they'll have, the lettering on the side for a business, and then I tell them like, well, why can't you put a magnet on the side of it to cover it up, because they have HOAs that are complaining about it, but it's an aluminum body, so they can't put, so they have to like drape something over the car just to cover up the stickering on it. So I figured most of the residential issues would have been covered by HOAs because they are strict, and you get people in those neighborhoods that'll, if it's parked in the street for more than X number of days or minutes or whatever, they're on them about it. So I figured we didn't have an issue there. But if we can clean up this language, I think it's fine with me. I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of Resolution 2022-37 with making the changes that staff and the Planning Commission recommended.
I'll second.
So we have a motion with amended language by Councilmember Trace, a second by Councilmember Askew. Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Councilmember Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
Resolution number 2022-0449R, a resolution of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, amending resolution number 2021-223R, which adopted the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget for the City of St. Cloud, finding the city manager has certified there are prior year fund balances and/or current revenues available in the budget for additional projects and programs and various funds not included in the original 2021-2022 budget, requiring the budget to be increased to include said additional fundings in the various funds, making a supplemental appropriations within the funds.
Good evening, Wendy Colazzo, Finance Director. This is Budget Amendment Number 4, Resolution Number 2022-049R. This is per the City Code of 2-212 for the amendments after any adoption of the budget. The city manager has certified that funds are available and are for appropriate use. This budget amendment meets the city's strategic plan goal of financial sustainability. I will go through each major fund with its net increases and those related to such increases or decreases per fund. Feel free to stop me if you have a question. General fund, we have 513,960, an increase. The increase in revenues by 513,000 is to the interfund transfers, an increase of expenditures to the city council contingency in the amount of 513,960. This is for the 5% administrative costs that the city municipal code allows to be charged in the service and administration of the park, police, fire, and mobility impact fees.
Question on that one.
Yes, sir.
So as we're going, when the parks, police, fire, and mobility impact fees were enacted and the study was done, was there a 5% administrative cost put in those as part of the calculation?
No.
Okay.
No.
So
not
as we're
correct.
going through the impact fee updates, can we add that? Because technically, if we had projects in there that were exactly budgeted right, they'd be 5% short now because of the administrative fee that we're moving over. And I know costs are all over the place, right? So it's anything we budgeted, it's now 30, 40% higher.
Right.
The costs are anyway, so I think we should be updating all of those anyway. But if we could add that 5% in there, if we're statutorily allowed to use those funds added into the fee.
So you want the 5% added to each projects that are being done within these funds?
As part of the calculation when the impact fees and mobility fee are created.
Okay.
So you're looking for the methodology that creates the fee to include a 5% cost administration? We're going to have to check
Yeah,
on
we
whether
gotta
we
check
can
on
do
that.
that.
Well,
We understand the question.
We're able to use the money as that way. I just want to make sure we're calculating it when we're charging the fee appropriately.
Well, I think what this general fund does, it transfers 5% of the established impact fee by the methodology. It doesn't add on to the cost of the methodology, the 5%. So it's not an add-on cost to the payer of the impact fee. It's a transfer of, am I get that right, Wendy?
Yes, sir.
It's a transfer of the money we collect based on the methodology that was adopted by the ordinance.
Okay, but if we calculated the fee a certain way and now we're taking 5% out of it for administrative costs, then it's 5%
In theory, we're
short.
getting 95% of the fee or something like that.
Right.
For the project. So we can, I understand, I think we understand what we're doing. I think we just need to vet it a little further
Yeah, let
and
me
look at that.
research it and how to
Okay.
do
'Cause
that and verify the
This
methodology.
is the first year we're doing this, right? It's something that we're allowed to do. It's just a matter of.
Yes, we've
it's the
been
first
allowed
year.
to do it before, and just the first year, we're
Okay.
going to do it.
I just
yeah.
want to make sure that we're then charging appropriately for. this.
Absolutely. I'll verify for you and just check that.
Thank you.
Pass it. Sorry, just let me take note. Okay. The next fund is the gas tank fund. This is a zero increase. The increase of revenue for interfund transfers is by 38,855. On the inverse, a decrease in revenue from prior year fund balance. This is due to closing the ST 1902 Bundinger and Nolte Signal Update Project. In the 1% fund, a zero increase. In interfund transfer, 63,120, and a decrease on the inverse of 63,120 as well. This is also due to closing projects, two projects of PR 1813. This is the historic building restoration, and PW 1903 field maintenance fleet maintenance system. Those two projects are being closed down. In the capital projects, there is no net increase. We are increasing expenditures for intergovernment transfers by 101,975 and decreasing expenditures for contractual services by the same due to the closing of the following projects, which are the PR 1813, PW 1903, which is the fleet maintenance, and the ST 1902 Bundinger and Nolte Signal Update. In the Parks Impact Fee Fund, 111,139 increase to prior year fund balance. This is to increase the expenditures in the interfund transfers. This is the 111,139, or the 5% administrative cost that the city municipal code allows for each individual fund, as noted, the Parks, Police, Fire, and Mobility. You'll see these in the following funds as well, just not only in Parks, but in the mentioned funds listed below. Police impact fee, here's your 53,527, that 5% city municipal code. 41,619 increase in the fire for the 5% municipal code. And in the mobility impact fee fund, 307,675. That's the increase to expenditures for likewise the 5% administrative code from the for the mobility fee fund. In the inverse, the 307,675, we are increasing expenditures for professional services by 350,000. We are decreasing contingency by 350 for the mobility fee. This is for the master plan update, the evaluation, and the implementation costs. In the water fund, $970,000 increase to prior year fund balance, increasing expenditures in the areas of professional services by $917,000. These are for projects WA 2207, Neptune Road relocation, WA 2212, Turnpike Interchange Water Main, and WA 2213, this is the Pardon Settlement Road relocation, and finally WA 2214, Toho Interconnect. In the sewer fund, no net increase. There's decrease in contingency expenditures by $200,000 and an increase in expenditures for professional services by $200,000. This is for the project number WW2206. This is the SCADA upgrade. In the building fund, we're increasing by $537,007. This increases to expenditures in the categories of mail and freight for $60,255, in operating supplies for $404,408, and in machinery and equipment by $72,344. This is for the purpose of the furniture and equipment that needs to be procured for the new City Hall atrium. Water impact fee fund, total net increase of 0. We're decreasing contingency expenditures by $1,100,000 and increasing expenditures in the areas of professional services for $1,100,000. This is for projects WA 2208, NEBS capacity increase, WA 2209, Nolte Road BPS, and then WA 2210, Hickory Tree Road. This is a 16-inch main, and the WA 2211 project. This is the old Hickory Tree 16-inch main upgrade. In the sewer impact fee, net increase of 0. This is decreasing contingency and contingency expenditure, by $4,250,000. We're increasing expenditures to professional services by $3,650,000 and increasing expenditures in contractual services by $600,000 for the following projects: WW 2208, this is a 10th Street 16-inch reuse main; WW 2209, the West Rate reuse main; WW 2210, the SSWWTF reuse storage pond; and WW 2207, the Old Hickory Tree 16-inch reuse. I did it. Didn't use one military letter. Staff recommends approval of resolution number 2022-049. City Council is requesting, we're requesting action to do such and approve resolution number 2022-049R.
Thank you. I'll open it up to comment and/or motion. Mr. Trace?
Question about building fund. We're spending $537,000 for the furniture, FF&E for the atrium, which is fine. I just wanted to make sure. So are we out of, or are we back in compliance with 3 years worth of
Yes,
building
sir.
fund revenue and all that stuff? So
Yes, sir.
we're good even with, everything that's come back in the past 2 years?
Yes, sir, we're in compliance with that. We are trending to be high again, so we are in plans to speak to the director about capital plans for the future, so we don't jam ourselves up again. But we are trending towards getting high balances again. So there's a couple things that, we'll discuss and not be in that. But currently, we're in compliance, and $72,000 of that total amount is what's going to furniture.
Thank you.
Great. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve resolution 2022-49R.
Second.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Trace, a second by Councilmember Askew. Do I have any public comment? Seeing and hearing none. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Our next section is council action. Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
Resolution number 2022-137R, a resolution of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, authorizing the city manager to enter into a task authorization to the continuing contract and agreement for professional engineering services with Tetra Tech, Inc., dated September 28, 2017, and any amendments thereto for Old Hickory Tree Road, 16-inch potable water and reuse water main extension, and providing an effective date.
Good evening. Marjorie Craig, Environmental Utilities Director, and this will be the last council meeting where I'll say that. So this is a task authorization for Tetra Tech, and this will be for Old Hickory Tree Road. Here's a map where it shows, see if I can get this to, you see where they'll be doing the design for a 16-inch water main, and also while they're there, doing the design for a reuse main as well. So we wanted to make sure we were in and out at the same time with the reuse and the water main. This will be bringing additional capacity and pressure up to the northeast, and we recommend authorization of this task authorization to Tetra Tech.
Thank you. Well, I would like to say before we get into it, thank you so much, Marjorie. You've done a wonderful job for the city of St. Cloud, and I know you'll do the same for Toho Water Authority as well.
I'm looking forward to it. I did request a step aside because I respect Mr. Swingle so much and look forward to serving him and the citizens, the customers, the way I have y'all. So,
Well,
thank you.
that's another reason you're an amazing leader right there. So I'll open it up to council for motion and/or discussion.
Can you go back to the map, please?
Councilmember Trace.
Really, questions?
Yeah, of course. I always have questions. Well, I finally had a chance to pull up the master plan. I didn't see
The master plan?
yeah.
The
Reese-
hydraulic master plan?
Well, the Reese master plan.
The hydraulic master plan.
Yeah. Okay. And I didn't see this reclaim main on there. I just didn't know, making that connection, I just didn't know why it was needed, or is that to get
So-
help pressure on the northeast
So it may
side?
not be in the version that you have. So we have done quite a bit of work, maybe since the version that you're looking at. And we are bringing, the ultimate goal is to bring reuse up to that area of town, because currently, a lot of those folks have jumper connections with potable water. And we really, the best use of potable water is for potable use. One of the reasons up in the northeast that the pressure concerns that we're having is potable being used for irrigation, and the confusion was people had the purple pipe and a purple meter, but they were actually getting their water from potable. And so going to a standard irrigation schedule makes all the difference. So getting that, that's just one more step in getting that reuse there. While we were there, we wanted to get that design in place. So there is another project that will get more of that reuse line in.
Then are we planning a line on Hickory Tree, or this will serve instead of Hickory Tree?
I'd have to get back to you on, the line goes all the way, and you know how directionally challenged I am, but it does go all the way down Old Hickory Tree, this particular line.
Okay, because I just had a thought of the next item, or two items down, is a new line on Hickory Tree, so we'll have parallel water lines on Hickory Tree. I didn't know if it would be possible to put in the water main on the east side of Hickory Tree, the bigger main, and take the existing main and make that a reclaim main.
In some cases, we're having parallel mains, which are equivalent. We're keeping some of the existing mains because it's an equivalent larger main, right?
Okay.
You'll see. Wait for the next one. I think you might.
Yeah,
see.
I was just trying to not have to put in a parallel pipe on Hickory Tree and then additional pipes on Old
Dig it
Hickory
up
Tree
and
that
then do
weren't.
another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Definitely keep that in mind if the opportunity arises.
Okay. Thank you.
Never forget when I went to Old Hickory Tree when they really meant to go to regular Hickory Tree.
Well, then you got east-west Old Hickory and north-south Old Hickory.
Yeah.
And
I know where I am now, but based on Dairy Queen, so.
try to find Boggy Creek.
There's another
Yeah,
one
we're getting a new
coming,
Dairy
isn't
Queen,
there?
I'm all excited.
Yeah. Do I have a motion?
You need public comment now.
I thought I did it after the.
Okay, it's your call, yeah, just reminding you.
I'm on it. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second it. A motion from Councilmember Askew, a second by myself. And now I'll take public comment.
After you approve it?
Haven't voted yet.
We haven't voted.
The record, haven't voted yet.
I got a question. How far up Old Hickory Tree Road does it go? All the way to
First,
192?
state your name and address for the record, please. And
Darren Davis, Old Hickory Tree.
Miss,
Old Hickory Tree?
Yeah. It's in my backyard.
Is it? So this particular one runs from just north of Nolte Road to Hickory Tree Elementary School. So it's not all the way, it's not to your house yet, but we'll look at it.
Well, I just wonder.
Can I get back to
Which
you?
side of the road?
Looks like it's on the west side of the road.
that
But it's a
Rome Bridge?
conceptual.
Rome Bridge on
I'll
that
give you a
side.
card.
All right. But it's going to Rhodey Bridge then, subdivision.
All right.
all right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Askew,
Aye.
Councilmember Trace,
Aye.
Councilmember Urban,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
Resolution number 2022-138R, a resolution of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, authorizing the city manager to enter into a task authorization to the continuing contract and agreement for professional engineering services with Wright Pierce, Inc., dated September 14, 2017, and any amendments thereto for Hickory Tree Road Water Main and Northeast Booster Station Upgrade Project and providing an effective date.
Again, this particular project is a task authorization, and it will provide a water main from Twin Lakes Boulevard to east to 192, and provide design, improvements to the NEBS, or the Northeast Booster Station. So here's a map of where the project is, and there's our booster station. We just call it NEBS. It's right along here where you guys have probably passed it, Rummel Road, and then here's the water line. So we recommend authorizing this task authorization to improve capacity and pressure up in the northeast area of town.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion and/or motion by council?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Urban, a second by Councilmember Askew. Is there any public comment? Seeing and hearing none. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Trace,
Aye.
Councilmember Urban,
Aye.
Councilmember Askew.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
4-0. Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
Resolution number 2022-139R, a resolution of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, authorizing the city manager to enter into a task authorization to the continuing contract and agreement for professional engineering services with CHA Consulting, Inc., dated September 21st, 2017, and any amendments thereto for Nolte Road Booster Pump Station and providing an effective date.
Good evening. This particular project is for the Nolte Road Booster Pump Station design, and provide a map here for you. Oops. Oh, that's the wrong direction. And it's for CHA Consulting. This is the location. And it's a proposed location. And it'll pump east through the existing 16-inch Nolte Road water main and north along Old Hickory Tree Road, and provide additional pressure up in the northeast service area. A lot of these projects have been on our books primarily for growth and for Center Lake, and they will provide additional pressure, of course, in the northeast service area. So we recommend that the council approves the task authorization to Chalk Consulting.
Thank you. I'll open it up for discussion and/or motion. Councilmember Trace.
Of
When-
course.
When you say Center Lake, do you mean Cypress Lake? So this is to serve Center Lake? And why do we need this to serve Center Lake? I guess, I mean, the hydraulic model had one way further south, so I didn't know why it needed to move, I guess.
The hydraulics showed that these projects were needed to serve that area of town. So that was the best optimization of the
Okay, and do we have a estimated cost of the construction of this? I know we're just doing the design right now, and it all depends, but what do we have budgeted for the actual booster pump station itself?
So it's about, this is about 20% of the actual, the task authorization is almost 300,000.
Okay. So $1.5 million, okay.
Yeah, about $1.5 million.
Thank you.
That's about right.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion from Councilmember Urban. I'll second it, Councilmember Matheny. And do we have any public comment?
Darren Davis, Old Hickory Tree. Whereabouts is the location of that pump station? I know it's on the Nolte, but I don't know what side or cross street is to it.
It's on your side.
See, all the expanded thing on the agenda has no maps, no diagrams, no nothing. All it does is give you the written part.
I'll make sure that you get a good map.
Do you know what the cross street is?
I can't
So
read it here.
it's not really a cross street, it's next to one of the
Yeah,
ponds
it's next to
on
to
Nolte.
this. You can have that. I forgot my reading glasses. If somebody has them, I can
East
read
of the lift station for Old Hickory, if you know where that is. So there's the city pond, between the city pond and that lift station for Old Hickory.
Yeah, so it's west of Old Hickory, and it's on Nolte, and it's on the south side of the road.
Sorry, I meant Old Hickory, the neighborhood, my bad. Between Old Hickory and the neighborhood Old Hickory.
Yes. But it doesn't look like there's a road. Again, I'll give you a card and you can come see me and we'll talk all about it.
If we don't
All the
have
details about it.
maps online, can we make sure that we include those?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, we can. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
Resolution number 2022-151R, a resolution of the City Council of the City of St. Cloud, Florida, approving a water and wastewater agreement from Park Square Enterprises LLC for Sutton Fields Townhomes, a residential development in the unincorporated area of Osceola County on the west side of Narcousie Road, north of East Lake Cove Boulevard and south of Dan Smith Road, authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement and providing an effective date.
So this is for Sutton Fields. This is outside the city limits, and that's why it's before you. This is where it's located. And this is where the project is located in reference to the city limits, which is pretty far away. It's almost 10 acres in aerial acreage, and it's 78 residential units. And since all of these are checked, and you're going to be so grateful I'm not reading them again, that means that every possible requirement has been put into the agreement. Staff is, I heard a sigh of relief out there. Staff is recommending that, that you pass this agreement. Water and wastewater capacity are available at this location.
Thank you. I'll open it up for discussion and or motion by council.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to
Second.
approve. Motion to approve by Councilmember Askew, a second by Councilmember Trace. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Councilmember Urban?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
So item number 5, we pulled for a future meeting. So item number 6, Madam Clerk, if you could read that item.
Discussion and possible action regarding the appointment to seat number 1 on the Police and Firefighter Pension Board.
Council, this is an expiration of a term for Donald Miller, and he has put in a request to be reappointed. And this is for seat number 1, which is an at-large seat. So we just have one person that's asking for reappointment.
All right, I'll open it up for discussion and or motion.
Motion to approve Don Miller.
Second.
I have a motion to approve Mr. Miller by Councilmember Trace, a second by Councilmember Askew. Is there any public comment? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Trace?
Aye.
Councilmember Urban?
Aye.
Councilmember Askew?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Matheny?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
Discussion and possible action regarding stormwater and solid waste fee collection.
Is,
That would be me.
oh, City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If you recall back during the Toho presentation, they talked about the fees that they will continue to collect on our water bills. That's the EMS fee, the stormwater fee, and the solid waste fee. They do not want to continue that in perpetuity. They'd like to transition away from that. And so I wanted to see the council's pulse on going through the process of putting our stormwater and our solid waste on the tax rolls. There's a complete legal process we have to go through. Dan can explain that a little bit better than I can, but my recommendation is we at least look at it, see what the administrative costs would be, and start the legal process. It takes probably about 6 to 8 months to get through the legal process. The benefits that I see is that it front loads your budget. So people usually pay their taxes. We usually collect about 95% of our taxes between October and January, and it would help us stabilize our budget a little bit. It also would ensure that we're getting more collections on some of, we do have some people that do not pay their fees and cause us some issues. So I guess I'm asking for direction from council just to explore it and bring you back some concepts and some costs. Dan, can you help me out on the legal side?
Sure, it can. So the city council actually a few years ago adopted actually a special assessment process, and it's in your code. And it's the intent is to use what's referred to as the uniform method of tax collection, which is where the assessments are established. They're established by methodology adopted by resolution of the city council. A special assessment process is put in place, and it requires an interlocal agreement with the tax collector and the property appraiser for the implementation of the collection. It's placed on the tax rolls, as Mr. Sturgeon said, and then ultimately collected. It does require having the city having an expert, at least a consultant that comes in and does the methodology. It's pretty simple in this case because the methodology is basically already in place because we know what exactly you're going to collect. But there is some annual recurring costs. The resolution has to be done annually. You have to do a special assessment resolution annually on it, and then and to address these issues. So it does require somewhat of a commitment. So we were looking for some direction of the council, but this is how you want to proceed. The assessment process has to be completed by January 1 for implementation. So we probably would not be able to get this in place until before January 1 of 2024. Just to get through that process, but we're looking for direction as to how the council wanted to proceed on this issue.
Well, I have some experience in this debate. It would be nice if we could possibly get pros and cons of each methodology. I know that when it goes on the tax bill, you do have a better percentage of payment than utility bills. I mean, our other option would be what, OUC, asking OUC to bill for us?
Yes, ma'am.
Which I know everything has pros and cons. Does it take a supermajority of council
No.
to do
No.
anything, and it doesn't go to vote?
Doesn't go to
Does it have
vote,
go on a
but
ballot?
it's not
It
a
doesn't have to do
referendum
anything?
that does like that. It requires public hearings. There's a couple of public hearings in place that have to do it, and special advertising that has to be done. And then, but it doesn't require a supermajority. Truthfully, in our experience, when you go from the utility billing position that you're in right now, where a person gets a monthly bill on it, to the assessment process, there's two pieces that come up. Most people their taxes are paid through their mortgage, so they don't even realize that it's being paid anymore. So the good side of that is that some people just all of a sudden realize they're not going to get a utility bill every month. Now, they're still paying pretty much the same amount of money. They're just paying it as part of their monthly mortgage payment because it gets incorporated into that piece. The negative piece that we've seen historically is in all sense appears to be a tax because you have to use the uniform method of tax, basically assessment collection, and so those what all the advertisements look like. So there would have to be some good education pieces put out there so that the general public doesn't realize or doesn't think that the city council is trying to raise a tax and establish a new tax or assessment. And essentially, you're just transferring the collection to this process. And I believe because of the way taxes are collected in the state and the ability for individuals to acquire tax certificates if the taxes are paid, I believe the collection rate is probably well into the 99%, if not higher rate, if you can get higher than without getting to 100%. Because ultimately, if someone doesn't pay their assessment, a tax certificate is bought, someone else pays it, and the money still goes to the taxing authority and to the city, in this case, as the special assessment collector. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see kind of a pros and cons of approaches. And for example, does a vacant lot in the city of St. Cloud pay stormwater fees?
Well, under this process, that's not going to change. So we can answer those questions for you, but I don't think it's staff's intention to change.
Well, I'm
the
just
method.
wondering, I mean, because that's a challenge, right? If it's a vacant lot and it's not getting a power bill, for example, and we're charging a stormwater assessment to a vacant lot, which I don't know if we do, then that's a challenge of collecting, right? You would be sending a OUC bill to someone with a fee that they would, I would just like to see the pros and cons, the
That's a good
collection
point.
rate.
I'm sorry, I get it. So if you had to pick another option other than
Right, if
Toho,
we went with OUC, right.
Those folks wouldn't be getting the bill.
Someone would get a power bill that doesn't have a home on their lot.
Right.
And,
Yes. Okay.
toss it. So, Mr. Trace.
Bring that back as part of it.
Thank you. And so pro cons, costs of both too, right? Because if we did our own separate bill, it's probably $1.50, $2 per bill that we send out every month, which probably takes up a lot of it. Ballpark, I know what the solid waste fee is per month, but what's the stormwater fee on a normal single-family?
It's like almost $7, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember. I got my bill today, and I just forgot to
I think
look.
it's a little under $7.
Okay, because my worry, especially on the solid waste fee, if it goes on the tax bill, is you have a lot of folks on fixed income that, they know it's $22 a month, and now it's $300 a year. That changes things for them, right? Because then they have to, once a year, come up with $300 instead of just $20 a month. That's different. So, that's part of the pro con.
Unless they're paying it through their mortgage.
Yeah, but I'll see, senior citizens that are on fixed income might not have a mortgage anymore, right? Because they have it paid off and they know exactly how much they make a month, and it's just, it would be a challenge. So maybe we could have programs to fix that if that ultimately is the best route, if we can save more money in the long run because of it. Because we have to know the costs of doing our own bill, paying OUC, because they're not going to do it for free for us to charge money for them. And the property appraiser doesn't do it for free either. They take a cut, or tax collector, sorry, takes a cut. So just balancing that out and running the numbers, I'm fine with that because, this is one of those unintended consequences of the Toho integration, right, is we got to figure out where all this stuff falls. And then having it on the tax bill might be a benefit for the stormwater side of things, because then when we go for grants, it's guaranteed to be paid by the property owners, and especially on vacant lots and stuff like that. I mean, that's a good point. So I'm fine with us looking into it, but need a lot more information before make a decision on it.
I had one more thing, Deputy Mayor, if I could.
Sure.
So the other thing I talked about, the EMS fee, it's going to be my recommendation, we sunset that in the integration agreement.
what?
The EMS fee, it's $3 a month.
Oh.
That we sunset that. We've already built that into the budget for this year, and I'll explain to you that, why we're going to do that during budget time.
Save money.
Okay, so do you have enough information?
Yes.
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 Great. City Attorney, do you have any items at this time?
One item, just as the deputy mayor knows, we did close on the 2 lots at Stevens at track 6 and 8A. The close, she signed the documents on Wednesday morning, and the transaction closed yesterday, or today, actually, was the final disbursement was today. So we're now down to, we did this, the Madison Grove lots, which we understand that they are going through the DRC review process. They are anticipating closing in September, if not before September.
Expedited review, please.
I don't have any control over that, and you don't want me to have any control over that.
But they did get funded, right? Like
They're completely funded. They have actually, we've been, Collazo left, but they've been putting a lot of pressure on us to review a lot of their documents that they have to go through for their funding. So they gave us a huge stack of documents that were.
We're still loaning them money over 10 years and all that, right?
Yeah, and we've had some, Mr. Sturgeon and I have had some discussions with them about it. That piece may be coming back to you, but we'll have to talk about that. We don't have any information further on that since last time. But all the indications is that they are plowing ahead and they're going to close because they're certainly spending a lot of effort on getting all the paperwork and everything done. Thank you. That's all I have.
City Manager?
The only thing I have is, I won't see you again till the next meeting, so 4th of July, happy 4th of July, be safe, and we'll see you at the celebration.
Thank you. Mr. Urban?
I don't have anything. Happy 4th of July to everyone.
Mr. Askew?
I have nothing, Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Mr. Trace?
I want to applaud the 6 folks that qualified for election, and looking forward to
Best of luck.
Best of luck, and
best of luck.
have fun.
The only thing I had for you, Mr. Sturgeon, was just the lights on New York Avenue are pretty,
Okay. Dingy?
Most of them are out.
Okay.
So I know I've asked about it a couple times, like what's the plan for the lights, and we could get those back up. So now we are to the information section and report section. Monday, July 4th, city offices will be closed in observance of the 4th of July holiday. Thursday, July 14th, there will be a city council meeting at 6:30 in City Hall Council Chambers. Thursday, July 21st, there will be a city council workshop at 3 p.m., City Hall Council Chambers. We have a proclamation. It is in recognition of Parks and Recreation Month. I think Ms. Holtkamp left. Please make sure to take a look at the warrant list, number 14. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting.